There were 3 people fighting. Emo didn't know any of them. Although they were all ancient martial artists, they were really weak. The highest leveled fighter among them was at the yellow level primary stage. The other 2 were a man and a woman. The man was at most barely at the yellow level. The woman wasn't even at a proper ancient martial arts level. Those 2 fought against that yellow level primary stage fighter. The 3 were all covered in injuries. The reason those 2 could fight with the yellow level primary stage martial artist was because he was more injured. Despite that, they were still on the losing side. Emo walked over. The 3 saw Emo as he suddenly appeared and all stopped fighting and looked at Emo. They were all injured, and now that Emo just came waltzing over, in the middle of nowhere in Xianxia, there was no way they wouldn't feel threatened by Emo. No ordinary person dared venture here. Plus, this young man didn't even have a speck of grass on him. "Who are you?" "We are resolving private matters. Please don't intervene," the yellow-level primary stage man said. Emo wasn't interested in who was right or wrong. He was interested in what they were fighting for. It was very easy to think of spirit items in the area of Xianxia. If it was something that could be of interest to him, he wouldn't mind interfering. Emo wasn't leaving, and so the 3 just stood there. No one wanted to attack first and let Emo reap all the benefits in the end. Seeing this, Emo asked, "I don't care about your private matters. Why are the 3 of you fighting, though? Did you find something good here in Xianxia?" The 3 heard Emo's words and knew he wanted to watch them fight it out and reap all the benefits afterwards. They immediately felt contempt towards Emo. The yellow-level primary stage man saluted with his fist and said, "Friend, we're not fighting for something we found here. It's because these 2 are going against everyone's interests that I must capture them. This is a gang matter." "Gang fights?" Emo immediately lost his interest and waved his hand, clearly about to leave. "Please wait a moment," the woman suddenly called out. Seeing this, the yellow-level primary stage guy immediately tensed up. He feared that Emo would stay and help them attack him. If Emo was an ordinary person, it wouldn't matter. But if Emo was an ancient martial artist, things would get troublesome. Even he didn't really believe Emo would be an ordinary person, however. What is it? If this woman was going to ask for his help with some gang affairs, he would leave without hesitation. The woman didn't seem to see Emo's impatient face and took out a bag from her waist, throwing it at Emo. "This is a new element I discovered, Chang 265. It has strong nuclear fission capabilities. It can definitely be used for nuclear bombs, but for now my information is still incomplete. If you give it to the Chinese government, they will give you a large sum of reward money for sure." "Luna, how dare you give this to some random stranger?" That yellow-level primary stage fighter's face changed drastically as he witnessed this. He then looked at Emo and said, "Friend, please give me this thing. It belongs to our organization. If you take it, it will be a disaster for your family." "A new element for making nuclear bombs?" Emo was shocked. What gang was this powerful? Even all the countries together had only discovered uranium and plutonium to make nuclear bombs with. This organization was actually able to discover a new one? Seeing how Emo didn't say anything, the yellow-level primary stage man got more and more worried. He tried to persuade Emo again. "Friend, what is in your hand is the result of many years of work by tens of scientists. If you give it back to me, I will definitely give you a satisfying price for it." "Li Dai, you're so shameless. This is the research result of my teacher and his colleague. How dare you say you want it back as if you invented it?" "Bullshit," Luna cursed. Emo looked at Li Dai and suddenly asked, "Which organization are you from? How come you have the power to research such things?" Li Dai knew that if he didn't name his organization, this young man wouldn't give a shit about him. So he said, "I'm Li Dai, and my organization is called Northern Sand. These 2 are traders of Northern Sand. Please don't intervene in our matters, friend. We will pay you back for this." "Northern Sand again?" Emo shook his head. Although Northern Sand was powerful and full of resources, wasn't this organization's management a bit too chaotic? There were always people running away left and right. Even if he didn't do anything, this organization wouldn't last long. A truly good organization wouldn't have people deserting it all the time, high-level personnel at that. Friend Dash, Li Dei still wanted to say something. Emo stopped him and said, "No need for your bullcrap. If you were from some other gang I wouldn't care, but you're actually from Northern Sand. I happen to have some small conflicts with Northern Sand, and this thing happens to be of some use to me too." Hearing this, Li Dei was shook. "Who are you? Why are you going against us?" "I'm Emo. I believe you wouldn't be unfamiliar with my name being from Northern Sand, right?" Emo smiled. "You're Emo?" The three cried out in shock almost at the same time. Emo's name was too big in Northern Sand. He had used an extreme energy stone to get 10 billion US dollars. Yet that energy stone had disappeared and Northern Sand had then lost another one as well. Li Dei woke up. Although he hadn't seen Emo, he knew clearly about how Emo had killed 27 of their elites and 4 black levels in Luozhong. Chun Jue and Peter had been there at the time as well, but even they hadn't been able to stop him. Then he moved his corporation to Sina and changed its name to Luoyu, declaring independence. Who wouldn't know about him? Li Dei took a step back subconsciously. He didn't dare ask for anything from Emo at all. "You're Emo? Emo from Luoyu City?" Luna asked in excitement. Emo looked at her in confusion and nodded. "Yes, I am. Yichinbei, I apologize for being rude before. I will leave now." Li Dei wanted to run. He didn't dare try to capture people in front of Emo. As for the bag in Emo's hands, it was out of his capabilities to take it. First and foremost, he had to report back. "Yichinbei, you can't spare him. He knows the information is in your hands, and he will report back to Northern Sand." The other man suddenly said. "I won't." Dash before Li Dei could finish talking. A wind blade was flying over already. "Thank you for saving us, Brother Yi. My boyfriend and I appreciate it greatly," Luna said as she saw Emo kill Li Dei. "So why did Northern Sand start hunting the two of you?" Emo studied the two and asked. Luna rubbed her eyes. "My sister Lu Lin and I were working for Northern Sand when suddenly, they wanted my sister to be the scapegoat for someone else, and she was taken away. It's unlikely that she's still alive. What a catastrophe. My sister did so many things for Northern Sand yet had to take the blame for someone else. I wanted to get revenge, but since I didn't have the ability to, we ran away from Northern Sand." Lu Lin? Emo suddenly thought of the woman called Sister Ling. Could it be her? If it was, then Emo could partially be blamed for her death. Emo studied Luna and found that she actually looked like Lu Lin. To be fair, Emo wasn't guilty at all. Everyone had simply acted out of their own interest. Emo raised the bag with the element. "This is your newly discovered element, Chang 265? Luna shook her head and said, "I was just an assistant. The main researchers were my teacher and 2 other chemistry professors. 2 months ago, the research was pretty much over, and my teacher fell ill due to overworking himself, and the 2 other chemistry professors went to the US and Lindsay respectively. That's when I found an opportunity to escape." "What is the professor at the Lindsay doing there?" Emo wondered and asked. Luna didn't mind Emo's question and replied casually, "I heard people say that Northern Sand's biggest base and research lab are somewhere in the Lindsay. That base also seems to be called Yongwan Base." Emo rejoiced. This was good news for him. He had been planning to go find the Black Sun Empire when Luoyu City was stabilized, but he didn't expect some Yongwan Base would also be there. "Chong, huh? This name is good. I truly hope it's Chong. Strong." "Indeed." Emo looked at the bag and said, since cultivation alone wasn't enough to destroy a country, he would use both technology and cultivation. Hearing this, Luna suddenly said, "My teacher named it that way. If he hadn't died, he might have received the Nobel Prize for Chemistry for this fission element." As Emo heard Luna's sorrow, he was sent into a daze. He felt as if he was very close to grasping something. Suddenly, the word fission flashed across his mind, and he thought of 1 leaf, 1 world, 3,000 leaves. He had gotten 2 pages of gold paper. If the word leaf was changed a bit, the sentence would be 1 page, 1 world. Leaf and page in Chinese were homonyms. Could it be that the Lian Hangjing sect had passed down one page, one world, but because so much time had passed, the inheritance was wrong? Or perhaps that ancestor had been wrong. Buddhists also like to use flowers, grass, and things like that to represent sophisticated things all the time. He had just never heard of pages being represented by something. Emo felt his guess was right. If he was right, then his 2 gold pages represented 2 worlds. So 2 pages, 2 worlds. But the numbers of Tao were either 3 or multiples thereof, like 6 or 9. So that meant that he couldn't see the full secret of the gold pages because the set was still incomplete. There was probably a 3rd page left. Emo was shocked. If his conjecture was right, then the woman who went to Lian Hangjing sect must have taken the middle one out of the 3 pages. If he was right, then wouldn't these pages be absurdly powerful? Such huge treasure wouldn't easily be found even in the cultivation realm. The objects that could form small worlds all surpassed spirit artifacts in level. Since when did Earth have such a thing? 1 leaf, 1 world, 3,000 leaves. Usually, everyone who cultivated the Tao knew that there were 3,000 great Taos which corresponded to the 3,000 great worlds. If it was 1 leaf, 1 world, 3,000 leaves. Then if he had 3 pages, that could be 3 worlds, each having 3,000 Taos. Together, that would be 9,000 Taos? God, Emo was getting more and more confused. He rubbed his head. He felt that there was so much meaning to these words that he couldn't digest it all now. No matter what secret it involved, these golden leaves were definitely significant. He might be missing only one, and it was probably taken by the woman who slaughtered Lian Hangjing sect. Thinking about 3 worlds being contained within that paper, Emo's heart was burning with intensity. He had to get that 3rd page no matter what. A woman, and she was half-step great heaven? Emo rubbed his head. Since when was there such a strong female cultivator? He thought of Luo Yin's martial aunt. Could it be her? The more Emo thought about it, the more he thought it had to be her. If it was, then everything would be explained. However now, she might have been able to find the gold page in the Tao Te Sutra, but she wouldn't find it in the ones Luo Xian gave her. What would she think then? She would suspect Luo Xian and go interrogate her. Emo immediately began to worry for Luo Xian. Yi Qianbei? Luna's boyfriend saw Emo's face change constantly and called out. Emo came back to his senses and realized those 2 were still there. He smiled awkwardly. Sorry, I was thinking about something just now. Thank you for this research, it is very useful to me. What are you planning on doing now? Emo wanted to invite Luna to Luoyu City after finding out that she had been involved in the research for the new element. Yiqinbei, after I graduated from the University of California, I joined Northern Sand and met Luna afterwards. We were planning on going to Luoyu City after running away to join Qianbei but were chased here instead. We also had one more martial brother who escaped, but he died by the Northern Sand people's hands. The man's tone was still careful and sad as well. Emo wouldn't have expected that they had wanted to join Luoyu all along. But it seemed obvious if you were being hunted by Northern Sand, there was no better place to go than Luoyu. You're welcomed greatly. What is your name? Also, don't call me Qianbei anymore, we're about the same age, right? Your martial arts are also quite good for a technical guy, by the way. Emo wouldn't reject such talent coming to Luoyu. My name is Liang Jun, and my martial arts were passed down by my ancestors. After my father left, I was all by myself, so I sold everything I had and went to the US. Other than that, if I hadn't met Luna, I would probably still be in Northern Sand, Liang Jun replied. Emo nodded. Okay. Go to Flowing Snake for now, that is Luoyu's land too. After you go there, find Xiaoyu. She will get people to send you to Luoyu. I will call her later. After Liang Jun and Luna left, Emo immediately called Yu Miaodong so she would send the 2 to Luoyu as soon as they arrived. As for the data, it was better to keep it on himself. After the 2 left, Emo sunk into worry. He was worried for Luo Xian, of course. With that old woman's means, she wouldn't give Luo Xian an easy time. But he couldn't leave Luoyu now either, as Luoyu was still under construction. What if something happened during his leave? Although he was worried, there was nothing Emo could do. He couldn't just put Luo Yu aside and go to the small world. Who knows what could happen while he was gone. Leaving before Luo Yu could protect itself would put in danger those who followed him in the case something happened. The gold leaf was also very important to him. If his guess was right, finding the 3 gold pages might lead to a miracle. Furthermore, Emo was sure that the old woman wouldn't kill Luo Xian before making sure she had the right information. If she did find out the truth, he had no need to go find her. She would just go to Luo Yi and look for him. It all depended on whether she would find out the secret of the blank page. Emo was sure that she wouldn't be willing to burn it like he did. Casting these thoughts aside, Emo had just arrived to the cave at Nan Lu Peak. It smelled bad, and there was a huge stone blocking the door. There were 2 rooms inside. One seemed to be meant for cultivation and sleep, and the other was probably used for cooking. It seemed like the gray-clothed man had really lived like a primitive, hiding in a cave and cultivating by himself. He had been quite perseverant. Emo didn't go to the kitchen. The smell of meat in there was unbearable. Emo's spirit sense scanned and soon found a lot of herbs, but they were all dried. Some of them were valuable, yet still useless for concocting pills. Emo went into the man's cultivation room and just saw a simple bed lying in there. Emo picked up the book beside the bed. It was written in ancient characters, and it showed the use and effects of different herbs. Emo finally understood why the man knew herbs that well. The book was useless to Emo, so he threw it away casually. Emo soon realized that there was nothing he wanted in there. He shook his head in disappointment. He really wondered how anyone could call these things a treasure. Just when Emo was about to leave, his spirit sense found a wooden box covered in dust under the bed. Emo opened it and saw something familiar. A yin-yang fish and an 8 trigrams shard. While holding these objects, he thought of the jade box he got from Guataiming, in which there was a purple coral inside and a map. He had used that map to find the upside-down gourd island, and in there he had found a shard too. He put the 2 pieces together, but it still wasn't complete. A few other shards were missing. Emo couldn't find out what that thing was anyway, so he threw out the wooden box and placed the 2 shards into the same jade box. He left the place and continued searching in Xianxia. That night, he managed to find a few lan su. After that, he returned to Luo Yu immediately. After giving the Chang data to Yixing, he started making pills. Because his yellow essence was limited, he only made 1 cauldron of essence chi pill. The pill was no use for foundation establishment levels in chi recovery, but for chi gathering middle stage and primary stage it was quite good. In a way, he had saved plenty of lives thanks to these 2 pills. Thinking about the things he did, Emo walked out of the cultivation room full of satisfaction. Suddenly, he felt chi pulses from next door. Emo scanned his spirit sense in and found that Ning Qingxue had just reached stage 3. While feeling happy for her, Emo sighed. He couldn't help thinking that his talent really wasn't such big of a deal. Ning Qingxue definitely didn't cultivate as hard as he did, nor did she have the resources he did, but she still had reached stage 3. It was time to make a flying sword for her, but he was short on materials. He wanted to go congratulate her, but he changed his mind after realizing that she was still reinforcing her state. Hence, he decided to immediately return to the cultivation room. He wanted to help Ning Qingxue and Tang Beiwei by making 2 storage rings for them. Luckily, he had only used 1/3 of the space abyssal rock last time and had gotten more at the auction. However, he didn't have enough supplementary materials, so he could only make 1. Because he still needed to go to the US, he chose to make a larger storage ring and give his to Ning Qingxue. Emo made up his mind and started working. He was at stage 5 by then, so he could set more stable space formation. With more stable space formation, he could make storage rings with greater capacity. 3 days later, Emo breathed at ease. He had used 3 essence chi pills and 3 times the space abyssal rock to make this new ring. The new storage ring had around 15 meters of circumference. Emo knew it was still too small, but his power was too low. If he was at foundation establishment level, he would be able to make a storage ring with 120 meters of circumference. Emo also improved his old ring. He made it a little bigger and added a blue diamond to it. He didn't care about the aesthetics, but Ning Qingxue was a girl and the ring couldn't look too ugly. After finishing it, Emo got up. Just when he was about to go out, Ning Qingxue pushed the doors open and came in. I've been waiting for you outside for 3 days. But you were cultivating, so I didn't dare to come in. I reached stage 3. She had bruised inside to tell Emo that she had broken through because she knew that Emo would be very happy to hear that. Emo looked at Ning Qingshua's face. It was getting prettier and more exquisite. She looked a little skinny. He knew she had been recently very busy because of Luo Yu and his heart ached for her. Qingxue, you've been very busy. Why don't you hire some people to help you with your work? Emo didn't want Ning Qingxue to work that hard. Ning Qingxue shook her head. No, I like my days busy and full of stuff to do. Moreover, I'm not the only one who's busy. Luo Fei and Yi Ling are both helping me. Mu Mei also came. Did Zifeng come too? Emo was only worried about those few people. If they were all in Luo Yu, he could be at ease. Ning Qingxue nodded. She came 3 days ago. Yi Ling came by a few times, but she didn't want to disturb you since you were cultivating. Yi Ling doesn't seem to be able to cultivate. Although I tried to teach her, she can't gather qi. Emo sighed. The thing he was worried about happened indeed. Not everyone has a spirit root. If Yi Ling couldn't cultivate, it meant she didn't have a spiritual root. There was nothing he could about that. In the cultivation realm, people without a spirit root could use unique spirit treasures to develop it. But on Earth that was impossible. Ning Qingxue tried to comfort him. Once Luo Yu City is built, this will be a very safe place. Even if she can't cultivate, she'll be fine. Emo didn't bother explaining. Ning Qingxue didn't know about the purpose of cultivation. She thought it was just to stay healthy. He took out a ring and gave it to Ning Qingxue. Qingxue, this is for you. Do you like it? Such a pretty ring. Ning Qingxue grabbed it immediately. Her eyes were already filled with sparkles. No woman could resist such a beautiful diamond ring, much less when it was given to her by the man she loved. After Emo helped her put it on, she could no longer resist the love in her heart and embraced Emo tightly. It was the first time Emo gave her a ring, and it was such a pretty blue diamond ring. Was he proposing to her? Emo held Ning Qingxue, sensing the faint aroma on her body as the fire in his heart burned. He kissed Ning Qingshue's lips and even forgot to tell her that it was a storage ring. As Ning Qingxue wore the ring she thought to be an engagement ring, she was already beginning to lose herself. She was getting more and more lost in Yemo's arms. How could she resist it when Yemo kissed her? She forgot that the door wasn't closed and deeply kissed him back. She felt as if her body were soft like jelly. One of Yemo's hands reached inside her clothes and grabbed the proud bulge at her chest. Suddenly, a desperate trot of footsteps woke the two up. Yi Ling saw that the room was unlocked and knew that her brother must have stopped cultivating. She charged in without hesitation. But what she saw was her brother embracing Qingxue. And when she saw where Yemo's hand was, she blushed and said, "Brother, you're really bad, aren't you? You didn't even close the door." Ning Qingxue also recovered from the fire in her heart and remembered where they were. She quickly left Yemo's arms and sorted out her clothes, but she was too embarrassed to talk to Yi Ling. Emo smiled awkwardly. "Yi Ling, you're back. How is Beijing?" Yi Ling immediately forgot about what had just happened and started rambling on about Beijing. Emo found out from her that although Yi Zifeng had settled in the Yi family, he was still too inexperienced. Within the convoluted power factions of Beijing, the Yi family was off far worse than before. Many people didn't dare do anything over the top for Yemo's sake, but if it wasn't for Yemo's reputation, perhaps the Yi family under Yi Zifeng's lead would have been left out of the center of power. Second brother said that the Yi family is far from what it was before. He plans on coming to Luo Yu, but Grandpa said he can't come yet. Grandpa said that the Americans are interested in Luo Yu and told you to be careful, brother. And even if Luo Yu stabilized, it would be best not to move away the factories in Flowing Snake, Yi Ling said. Emo nodded. What they said about Old Ginger being the spiciest was true indeed. Yi Beirong always looked very far ahead. Many people knew what the Americans had planned for Luo Yu. It wasn't hard to tell, since even though they wanted the place, they still hadn't made a move. Emo frowned. Since other people could see the problem, if he dragged on for too long, the Americans would also understand that he knew what they wanted. If that happened, would they try to completely destroy Luoyu? Emo looked at Ning Qingxue and Yi Ling and smiled. What did he have to be scared about? He would deal with the situation accordingly. Why be afraid up front? Thinking about the current situation, Emo gathered everyone again to discuss their countermeasures. Because they were short on time, Emo couldn't drag things on. He needed to think of a plan quick. After everyone heard Yemo's words, they knew that they couldn't rush things too much, though. Luoyu had only just been built. Even a normal country wouldn't be able to become a militarily strong power in such short time. Marshal brother, I looked at the data you brought back. I'm confident that I can invent the new type of intercontinental nuclear bomb within a year. But we have too little technical people staff. If we had some more, I'm sure we'd be able to research different projects faster. Yixing stood up and said, Then, let's start hiring people from all over the world. If we offer more money, I'm sure people will be willing to come work, Yiling said without thinking. Su Yuehua shook her head. Although we earn a lot of money, facing the increasingly huge military expenses and construction, we're actually only barely making it. We already hired large amounts of people when we first came here. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to build our defensive system that rapidly. If we hire more people, I'm afraid we will go bankrupt. Su Yuehua didn't say that if Emo hadn't made $10 billion recently, Luoyu would have perhaps gone bankrupt already. Emo sunk into silence. His Immortal hospital made a lot for every patient it had. But there were too little patients. And on Earth, he couldn't even sell his face-preserving pill properly. Hearing Su Yuehua's words, Yixing also nodded. Yes, Sister Yuehua is right. And if we get some money, I suggest investing in our naval power, including motherships. We also need to build ship factories and large docks. Luoyu faces the sea on 3 sides. We absolutely must have naval power. It all came down to money. Huh? Emo sighed. How could he earn large amounts of wealth in a short time? If only we had something like that largest diamond mine in Russia. There's about 1 trillion carats worth of diamonds there. If you changed that into USD, it would be enough to fill this entire island, Yiling said. Ning Qingxue subconsciously looked at her ring and wondered when Emo would marry her. How much money would that be? Emo asked subconsciously. If they were all decent quality, then about 10.000 trillion US dollars. But that's impossible. If diamond was that easily excavated, then it would have all been dug out already, Su Yuehua said. Emo thought, it might be hard for others, but it's not hard for me. Now that he was stage 5, he could move through Earth. He could even use his spirit sense in the Earth to look for diamonds. As for the toughness of diamonds, that would spell no problems for his flying sword. Emo believed that everything would be like dust beneath the sharpness of his flying sword. Besides, he knew the hardness of diamond already. He had just made one for Ning Qingxue. There was no problem at all. The only challenge was that because he had only just reached stage 5, it would be hard to use his spirit sense to search for diamonds while he moved through the Earth. After all, Earth that could form diamond would be rather hard. He couldn't just rely on his own chi. No one spoke, seeing that Emo was considering something in silence. After quite a while, Emo slammed the table and said, Sister Yuehua, immediately spread the message across the world that we're recruiting technical staff. As long as they come, their salary will be multiple times their original salary. Especially military technological staff. Yixing, as soon as they come, immediately get them to join your research on the military products we need. Also, buy large amounts of weapons, be it cannons, bullets, planes, or construction lines. As for money, I will handle it. Emo figured that since he couldn't just rely on his own chi, he would just make charms. He would make large amounts of Earth travel runes and traverse the Earth without a problem. Emo didn't expect himself to find 200 million kilograms of diamonds randomly, but it would be a huge harvest already if he found just 1 ton. With all those mechanical beds and production lines, Yixing's inventions would come out much faster. Although most countries kept their most talented scientists under control, some didn't. If he couldn't get enough scientists, he would just abduct them like the Black Sun Empire did. At the moment, the US hadn't found the Black Sun's base yet. But when they did, wouldn't all those abducted scientists come under their control? That would be dangerous. He couldn't let that happen. He had to go to the Bai Lin Sea immediately. He had to find the Black Sun Empire before the US. So Yemo quickly left Luoyu. He even put the Earth mobility charms and diamonds aside. An hour later, Yemo got to the island he had gone to find Ning Qingxue in the past. Last time he had been there was a wooden house in the middle, but now that wooden house was gone and so were the 4 dead bodies. It seemed that people had been here. He had marked the Black Sun logo last time, but that mark had to be within range to be detected. Yemo walked around and didn't find anything. Yemo gave up on the island and kept searching. Although his spirit sense had a radius of 800 m, it was still hard to find a hidden place in the vast ocean. Yemo didn't want to give up, though. The Black Sun Empire had been established many years ago, and who knows how many scientists the Japanese pirates had taken. Moreover, who knows how many scientific discoveries had they found. To Yemo, this was more valuable than diamonds. If he got hold of those research findings, it would take 10 years less from Luoyu's development process. For Luoyu City's sake, Yemo searched the seas day and night, but he didn't find anything for 3 consecutive days. On the 4th day, when Yemo was about to approach a small group of islands, he felt he was being locked by something. Yemo knew it wasn't good, so he switched places and turned invisible. Soon, Yemo saw a small patrol ship on the sea. Looking at the flag, he knew they were Americans. Yemo didn't do anything to it and looked around first. It was quite odd to see a single patrol boat there, much less such a small one. When he got closer to them, around 100 kilometers away from the patrol boat, he saw a ship without any flags. There were a few Japanese men on it, and he immediately could tell that they were the Black Sun Empire's men. Yemo rejoiced, and at the same time also realized why the US ship was following them. They hadn't found the Black Sun Empire's base either. No matter how long the US ship had been following it, Yemo decided to end the ship's chasing game and take for him the results. With this in mind, Yemo flew above the US ship and got ready to attack. At the same time, a few officers in the command center looked at the radar with confusion. They had clearly found an unidentified object a moment ago, but why had it suddenly disappeared? It appeared again. It's 1,000 meters above the ship, a small bearded man claimed. Lock on immediate dash before the captain could finish. The small beard screamed again. Everyone looked at the direction he was pointing at. A white flash crossed the radar screen. What kind of attack was that? Return fire, the captain ordered. He had reacted much faster than the Indonesian Navy. Yemo stopped being invisible. The flying sword in his hand turned into a white ray and sliced the ship below. After reaching stage 5, his flying sword could turn into a 10-meter long and 3-meter wide sword ray. Rumble, Yemo's flying sword had cut the ship right in the middle from top to bottom. What's going on? Everyone felt the ship shake. It seemed to be slanted. Water is coming inside, a marine yelled. Their ship hadn't even had time to attack and it was sinking already. This was too absurd. Yemo took back his flying sword and stared at the ship sinking slowly. He shook his head. He was still too weak. If he had been stronger, he could have sliced the ship in half. That would have been more shocking. However, it was impossible to remedy the cut and the ship was falling apart. Life rafts had gotten released already. Yemo was angry. He had attacked already, but he couldn't these people escape. Before they got onto the life rafts, he changed directions and sliced the boat again. This way, the ship sunk fast and it soon disappeared into the endless sea. After making sure that no one could survive, Yemo chased after the small boat. The Japanese boat had sped up a lot. Because they had known they were being followed, they moved slowly in order to think of a countermeasure. But the ship that was following them suddenly disappeared for some reason, so they sped up quickly. More US ships soon appeared where their patrol boat had sunk, but nothing was left there. After following the Japanese boat for 5 days, it stopped on an island. It was a coral island, smaller than the one before. Yemo really didn't know what the Japanese were doing at the island. Neither did he know why so many of their bases were located on these islands. The island also had a small wooden house, but this time there were 2 of them. 8 Japanese Marines got off the boat carrying large wooden cases. After the men got off, one of them stayed outside and the remaining 7 went inside. They all had a black sun necklace on them. EMO scanned his spirit sense in the wooden box and suddenly realized that they were all full of gold. Looking at the size of the box, each weighed about 150 kilograms, which meant that there were more than 500 kilograms of gold there. That would be about 20 million US dollars. Although it wasn't a small amount, it wasn't much for Yemo. Yemo scanned the island carefully with his spirit sense. From his previous experiences, he knew that there were large amounts of alarms and a few radar systems. After the Japanese men went into the wooden house, they started talking. But Yemo couldn't understand anything, so he could only stay invisible and mark the island with multiple spirit sense marks. After this, Yemo left the island. He knew that they had poison for committing suicide. And even if he could subjugate them before they did it, he didn't understand Japanese, so he couldn't interrogate them. He might as well wait on the side. He didn't believe they wouldn't go back. After leaving, Yemo went to another coral island 10 kilometers away. He believed that as long as he wasn't in the air, the radar wouldn't notice a person in the ocean. That 10 kilometers distance was just the distance he needed to still sense the spirit sense marks. For a moment, it seemed like the Black Sun men had decided to stay there long-term. They hadn't left in many days nor given any signs of going somewhere. Just when he was getting impatient, Yemo's spirit sense mark moved. He flew above the island and found a fishing boat parked next to it. He didn't even know where it came from. It had made no sound at all. Yemo carefully landed behind a rock and scanned his spirit sense. He was dazed with what he found. A few days ago there had been only 4 boxes of gold, but now there were 40. How did so many suddenly appear? Yemo scanned his spirit sense out and immediately found that there was an underground bunker behind the wooden house. The Japanese men had gotten the gold from somewhere and stored it underground. He hadn't even noticed it last time. It seemed that they were preparing to leave after loading the boat with the gold. As Yemo expected, the 40 boxes were soon carried onto the fishing boat. Then, the fishing boat's engine started and left the island. What shocked Yemo was that the fishing boat was much faster than their previous ship. It almost made no sound at all. What kind of engine was that? It was clearly a high-tech boat. Yemo really wanted to kill the 8 guys that were staying on the island but eventually didn't do anything. He didn't want to alarm the enemy, so he chose to follow this ship instead. By the time it was dark, Yemo understood that this ship was almost faster than normal cars, even though it looked heavy and wasn't something that could be compared with jet skis. Yemo landed on one corner of the fishing boat and found that it was armed with cannons and missiles. What shocked Yemo the most was how little sound the engine made. One could only hear the waves and barely the engine. Yemo was interested in this. This definitely had to be the latest product of the Black Sun Empire. This wasn't even a battleship, so perhaps their actual warships were much stronger than the US's already. If he could move all of that to Luoyu, Yemo was deep in thought as this boat kept going for the entire night. The next day, it entered a narrow port. Yemo scanned the surroundings with his spirit sense. This was an island, a private island. There were guards around the island. Yemo couldn't sense how big the island was with his spirit sense, but he saw it very clearly. It had large groups of buildings, green mountains and lakes, and there were all sorts of entertainment facilities on the beach. This was clearly a luxury private holiday resort. Yemo refocused his gaze as the ship went into the island, stopping at a simplistic port. There were 4 Japanese men guarding at the pier, 2 of them out in the open and 2 hidden out of sight. Of course, to Yemo's spirit sense, there was no difference. Then there was also a cargo truck waiting by the port. Seeing the fishing boat arrive, 2 Japanese got off the cargo truck. They quickly brought the gold onto the cargo truck, and it started driving immediately. During the whole process, Yemo didn't hear a single word. Clearly, this wasn't their first time doing this. After the cargo ship left, Yemo immediately killed the 4 people remaining on it, as well as the 4 guards. Then, he followed the truck further into the island. Soon, the truck entered a valley. In it, Yemo practically found another world. There were large amounts of expensive mansions and a comb of large laboratories, blocked by all the trees. Yemo checked the place with his spirit sense. The security around the valley was very tight. This was one of the Black Sun Empire's bases indeed. He wondered if all their scientists were here. The truck stopped outside what seemed to be a vault, and so did Emo. There were cameras and automatic trigger response weapons everywhere. In order to prevent himself from being spotted, Emo put an essence chi pill inside his mouth to maintain the chi level needed for his invisibility mode. There were 4 armed guards inside the vault. After checking the truck driver's documents and the contents of the car, the 4 guards retreated. Emo's spirit sense found that behind the door of the vault was a long tunnel. There were constantly lasers crossing around the whole area. So thorough. Emo was astonished. With such serious security, Emo was sure that even he wouldn't be able to break in through there. Who knew if he could stop these lasers? With his current power, it would be very hard. But of course, even if the vault was heavily guarded, it wouldn't stop Emo from going in if he really wanted to. After all, he didn't have to go through the tunnel. Other places may have many meters of steel protection, but that was no problem for Emo. After the guards retreated and the door to the vault was opened, Emo saw the lasers disappear. The truck drove into the vault. Upon gazing at the vault filled with wooden crates, Emo was dazed. How many wooden crates were here? There had to be at least 3,000 to 4,000. That meant that there was around 500 to 600 tons of gold. He didn't expect the Black Sun Empire to be this rich. Why would they keep this much gold? Why would they not turn it into money? Why store it and guard it so heavily instead? Although gold was worth money, the gold here would only amount to a couple tens of billions of USD. That might be quite a lot, but for modern scientific research it wasn't that huge. After the truck was unloaded, Emo didn't follow it out but stayed in this vault instead. The vault walls were made of steel boards and were indeed rather thick. Emo's spirit sense couldn't penetrate it. Emo found one steel board and started digging into it with his flying sword. After digging for about 30 centimeters, there some sparks appeared, but that was nothing to the flying sword. Soon, it dug through the sparky layer and after digging for another meter, a hole appeared. Emo immediately knew that the sparks must have been caused by an electrified layer in the wall. If someone tried to pierce the steel layer with tools and touch the electricity, they would die for sure. But Emo's flying sword could be called a super resistor. If his flying sword were conductive, then when he fought with lightning cultivators, he'd be in for some suffering. Emo kept digging the hole until he had dug through. He thought that when he reached the electrified layer, he would trigger the alarm, but even after waiting for a while, nothing happened. Soon, Emo understood that his flying sword was not only non-conductive, it was also so sharp that there were no metal shillings touching the electrified layer. There was no loss of electric current, and thus the alarm wasn't triggered. After leaving the vault, Emo found himself standing in a small room with a man staring at him in daze. He was shocked seeing where Emo came out from. He didn't know what was inside the metal wall, but he knew that he couldn't touch it. Yet now a person came out of it. The man reacted rapidly, though, but just as he wanted to press the alarm, Emo burned him to a crisp with a fireball. After killing this man, Emo looked around the room carefully. It was full of surveillance equipment. Emo suddenly saw a faint shadow on the main monitor. This shadow was so faint that if one didn't look carefully, one wouldn't even be able to see it. But Emo was shocked. He knew that this was his shadow. He didn't think that the camera would still be able to capture him even when he was invisible. Was he too weak or was this surveillance camera just too high-tech? Emo cut some wires and planned on taking away the hard drive, but he found that there was no hard drive, only monitors. Emo thought for a moment and decided to simply start slaughtering away. He had to take away that gold, but he had no means to like that. His storage ring was too small. After leaving this room, Emo started looking for the control center. But Emo didn't understand Japanese, so he searched for a long time and killed tens of men but didn't find one who knew Chinese. Emo was getting impetuous. If he couldn't find anyone who did, then he might as well kill everyone. Emo also didn't feel like there was an airport there, so he didn't think the scientists would be there. If they weren't, then at the worst he had at least earned some money. Right when Emo was doubting what to do, a bulky man accompanied by 2 guards walked over. Emo killed the two guards without thought and grabbed the bulky man, asking his usual question, "Do you know Chinese?" The first thing the bulky man did when he realized the situation was to bite hard on his teeth. But Emo was experienced and stopped him. Emo sighed. These Japanese were really cruel to themselves. Emo pressed on the Japanese guy's forehead and asked, "Do you know Chinese?" "I do." Emo rejoiced at that answer and asked a series of questions. "Reply to everything in Chinese. What is it you do here? What authority do you have?" "I'm the guard captain here, responsible for security." "How many people are active here?" "How well defended is this place?" "What valuable things are here?" "Are there any captured scientists?" The man answered all the questions very precisely. After an entire hour, Emo got what he wanted and casually got rid of the man. Emo found out that this island was called Black Star Island, and it was one of the main scientific research islands of the Black Sun Empire. Although it wasn't very large, there were 739 people guarding it. There were also all sorts of anti-missile systems and radars. A total of 242 scientists was held captive here, 89 of whom were world-renowned scientists. Those high-level mansions were the scientists' research facilities. There was no airport, so all of their seized planes were kept on another island 1,000 nautical miles from away. There were 537 tons of gold stored there, beyond half of the Empire's gold storage. After knowing that, the first place Emo went to was the control center. He cut off all the communication devices, but Emo knew that even if he destroyed the whole room, some wireless signals would still be able to go out. But he only needed some time. Then he started killing. Emo didn't hold back and killed everyone he saw. In the end, Emo was sure he had killed everyone as no one could escape from his spirit sense. Then Emo went to the research facilities. They were also heavily guarded, but the environment was really something. It was truly like a holiday resort except for the place being rather small. There were a lot of offices and laboratories, and everyone was focused on doing their own thing. The place was made up of 10 faculties, and each one worked individually but all in the same area. After coming here, Emo felt like he had come to university again. When Emo rushed into the largest faculty, a few foreigners looked at him in shock immediately. According to them, although they were free inside the faculties, no one would usually be allowed to come in. Although they could go out a bit, they had limited time and space when doing so. At most, they would be able to have a glance at the beach. Seeing them look at him, Emo frowned. He didn't know English. He could understand some simple conversations, but he couldn't speak. "Does anyone here know Chinese?" Emo looked around. Then, one man stood out hesitantly. "I'm Chinese. Who are you?" Emo rejoiced, but before he could talk, his spirit sense caught onto a guy with an alarm. Emo threw a wind blade over before he could press it, and the man was cut in half immediately. The bloody scene scared the researchers. Emo looked around carefully and realized that that person must have been undercover. Other than him, everyone else was normal. "The person I just killed was a Japanese member hiding amongst you to keep watch on you. Now, anyone who wishes to leave with me, please come forward. If you don't want to leave, you can stay here." Emo didn't really mean that. He knew that no matter how good this place was, no one would want to be kept in custody. "You're here to save us?" an old white man said in disjointed Chinese. Emo nodded. "You could say that, but I do have my conditions. I can get you out of these people's custody, and you will be free men, but you will have to work at my place for 5 years before being allowed to leave. During your working period, however, you're free to roam anywhere on my land." "You're from another organization?" That white man immediately didn't seem too willing. From one place to another, they would still be kept in custody. There was no difference. Emo smiled. "No, we are openly building a city. My company is called Luo Yu Pharmaceuticals. It's not a place like this that lurks in the shadows." "Luo Yu Pharmaceuticals?" That Chinese man repeated in shock and immediately said, "I'm willing to go. I've heard of your corporation. It said that a few months ago you took over Sina and changed its name to Luo Yu and then declared independence. It seems they weren't restricted from TV access. In that case, it would save him a lot of explaining." The foreigner also knew about Luo Yu and explained it to the other scientists there. After hearing that it was a proper city, they all expressed their willingness to leave. They could only get true freedom after 5 years, but the city was thousands of times larger than this place. That was enough to make them want to leave that cage. Emo was very happy that they all wanted to leave. If there had been someone who didn't want to go, Emo would kill them before he left. He couldn't leave any evidence behind. Then, Emo told them to gather all their research findings and computers for him. The Chinese man was an American Chinese materials researcher called Xianxia. He helped Emo quite a bit. Emo used the same method to convince all the other faculties and killed 12 more undercover enemies in the meantime. Under Yemo's command and with Xianxia and that old white man's help, they spent an entire day loading all the things onto the ship. Although the fishing ship was large, it wasn't large, it was a cargo ship, so it could only carry 2,000 to 3,000 tons. The gold took up a few hundred tons alone. So many things couldn't be taken, but Emo could only leave them behind. As the ship left the port, 2 helicopters finally came over. They landed on the island. They only came because the surveillance data seemed abnormal and because they received no replies to their queries, but they had come too late. After Huang Yusi and the old white man called Pete's introduction, Emo knew that most of the scientists here were military-related. Even Emo couldn't help but sigh at the Black Sun Empire's capability to acquire so many talented people over the years. One could see their ambitions from that. After some more years of hard work, perhaps they really would be able to build a militarily powerful country. Emo really didn't know where their money to support such high-cost scientific research could have come from. That northern sand seemed to be the same. Just what was it they all wanted to achieve? Was there some correlation between the Black Sun Empire and northern sand? Just as Emo was thinking about this, there was some loud rumbling, and 4 battle jets appeared above the fishing boat. The researchers on the boat immediately had their faces turn pale. Although they had been held captive on the island, at least they had kept their lives. But if these battle jets rained bullets on them, they wouldn't even be able to live, let alone be freed from captivity. While everyone was nervously watching the fighter jets, no one discovered that Emo had disappeared. The jets kept flying in front of the boat. Even clueless people would understand that they were forcing the boat to stop. Although there were missiles and cannons and the boat, no one there was some professional operator. The 4 fighter jets were like 4 sheep in front of Emo. They couldn't stop Emo's flying sword. Emo sliced out 4 consecutive times. Rumble fire sparks were visible as the 4 jets fell into the cold sea with a huge splash. Everyone looked at the falling jets in shock. They couldn't comprehend what had happened. Why would the jets that were supposed to be stopping them suddenly fall into the ocean? Emo reappeared on the ship. He glanced at everyone who was still in a daze and just told Xianxia that he needed some rest and that no one was to disturb him without any major happenings. Then he went into a private room. Emo knew that even though he had annihilated 4 planes this time, there would still be more ships trying to stop them coming up. There was quite some distance from the Bailing Sea to Luo Yu. Emo didn't mind the ships chasing behind as with their speed, it would be very hard to catch up to them. Emo only worried that the fleet not that far ahead of them was most likely a U.S. fleet. They had lost a ship a few days ago, so they would have increased their Pacific naval power. Who knew if they wouldn't suddenly block their route? The shortest way back to Luo Yu was through the Pacific. And the north of the Pacific was America's backyard. So Emo didn't stay on the fishing boat's deck for now and just told Xianxia the direction they had to take. While he kept scanning the path ahead, he didn't want the US and Luo Yu to fight yet, so if he couldn't annihilate them all, he wouldn't do anything. What shook Emo was that the first fleet to stop them wasn't the US fleet but a Japanese fleet. It was as though they knew where the fishing boat would be passing by and had positioned themselves there. The fleet contained 1 guard ship, 2 vanguards, and 2 nuclear-powered submarines. Emo attacked those ships without second thought. Under Yemo's flying sword attacks, the 2 vanguards and the guard ship started to sink. But this time, the Japanese did find the opportunity to retaliate. Even then, after all 3 ships started to think, they could only fire with their cannon once. Add for the 2 nuclear submarines. Emo sliced them open without hesitation. The people inside wouldn't be able to survive unless they were cultivators like Emo. In a short while, the entire Japanese fleet had sunk. It was so fast that no one had even been able to react. The Japanese command center only received news that they were being attacked, and by the time they arrived at the place of the incident, there was nothing left. After the fishing boat passed by Japan, patrol boats of a few other countries also found them, but none of them could catch up. In order to take the quickest route, the fishing boat passed straight by the Philippines and Indonesia. During this time, Emo annihilated 2 more planes from Indonesia and 3 more ships. The Philippine military saw those planes and ships sink for no reason, so they didn't dare approach too closely and just watched the fishing boat go past them into the Indian Ocean. After that, Emo knew that they were completely safe. Even so, he still turned back and destroyed the 2 planes following them. What Emo felt strange about was that he had annihilated planes and ships from a few countries, but he hadn't seen any from the US, while Su Yuehua, Su Ping and everyone else were shocked at the amount of technical staff and gold Emo had brought back. The entire world was in even greater shock. The US once again announced the existence of aliens because they had lost an entire fleet in the Pacific Ocean, and according to the report they got, a UFO was responsible for the sinking. There had been white flashes of light before the devastating attacks, and the ships hadn't even been able to retaliate at all. After that, the US urged the Commonwealth Union to join them in the Earth Protection Plan. Japan also released large amounts of information, saying that one of their fleets had also completely ceased to exist. They found the shipwreck somewhere near them, and it seemed they had been done in by the same means as the US ships. It was as though they had been cut by a sword. There were no modern weapons that could cause such damage. The ships could only have actually been hacked by a sword, but who could cut a ship in half with a sword? Then, the Philippines and Indonesia also declared they had seen a fishing boat go faster than 60 kilometers per hour, with Indonesia also having suffered losses. Their planes following the ship had also fallen into the sea for no reason. It was confirmed that all these planes and ships had been damaged by the same type of weapon. Knowing that the fishing boat had been sighted, Su Yuehua immediately ordered for its breakdown. Emo had brought back so many technicians, many of which were renowned internationally, which eased the pressure on Su Yuehua and Yixing greatly. From Su Yuehua, Emo heard that the gold could be used as the basis for building a country, so Emo gave up the thought of selling it for now. Firstly, although Luoyu wasn't a country, it was an independent city. Who knew if they wouldn't have their own currency? So they needed to store a certain amount of gold. Secondly, if Luoyu started selling large amounts of gold, then the Black Sun Empire would obviously immediately suspect them. Emo sighed. He thought that the money problem would have been solved after getting this much gold, yet he still had to go make money. All that technical staff was sent to a top-secret location. Emo and Huang Xiao had explained that before Luoyu could lock down completely, they could only be hidden for now. Huang Xiao and Pete were basically Luoyu's people now, so they didn't feel any pressure and went to join other researchers in their work instead. With the addition of these scientists, Luoyu's research power had increased by manifolds. Emo also started to make those Earth travel charms in preparation for his diamond digging in Russia. Meanwhile, on the island that Emo had slaughtered clean, there was a rampage going on. An old man in his 60s was roaring, "Find it no matter what!" They had lost almost 80% of the Black Sun Empire's gold. That was a decade's worth of their efforts. A month later, Emo had made almost 1,000 Earth travel charms. With that, Emo left Luoyu and went to Siberia, going to the Amber Craters. He had heard there were tens of thousands of carats of diamond there. This place was so cold. Emo was at the Middle Eastern part of Siberia. This was near the Arctic Ocean. Emo looked at the big amber crater that looked like a dried-up riverbed. The frozen earth was extra hard. Construction workers were busying about as they seemed to be building some living houses or facilities. Emo estimated that they were about to start digging this place. Emo used an earth travel charm to go down but felt the charm get exhausted very quickly. The hardness of the earth here had far exceeded his expectations, and his spirit sense could only reach out a little more than 10 meters. It would seem that diamonds weren't that easy to get, after all. 300 meters underground, Emo already felt it was getting too hard. Even with Earth travel charms, he couldn't continue going down. But before he had gone there, he had looked carefully at where and how diamonds were formed. He knew that there were some usually a few hundred meters within the digging site, but that was only a small amount. Diamonds were usually thousands or even tens of thousands of meters underground. Unless he cultivated to the golden core stage, he wouldn't be able to go down that deep. EMO searched for an entire day at a few hundred meters deep and used up more than half of his charms only to find 7 kilograms of diamond. EMO was disappointed. After wasting another 100 charms, he left the diamond pit. This way wasn't working. He had wasted that many charms only to find 7 kilograms of diamonds. The amount he invested wasn't equal to his return at all. Perhaps this amount of diamond would be a huge fortune for others, but to him it was too little. The only thing he could feel happy about was that he had found one piece that was half a kilogram heavy. EMO found a quiet place and rested for a day. Using his spirit sense in such dense earth had made him feel very fatigued. EMO recovered only after a whole day of resting. Although there were supposedly large amounts of diamonds there, he had found very little the first day. He would find even less on the second day. Moreover, he used up a lot of charms which he had taken a whole month to make. He couldn't continue like this. He had access to neither spirit beast blood, nor proper charm-making materials. With his power, he could at most make low-level charms. He could barely make level 2 charms if he got lucky, but there was still no use in that. As EMO stood in the cold Siberian air, he felt that the road he had chosen wasn't that easy. If America didn't exist, creating Luo Yu would be so much easier. America? EMO suddenly laughed. Shouldn't they also have large amounts of gold deposits? Why don't I go take all I need from them? That'll be better than doing labor in this place. Thinking like that, EMO really felt like laughing. He wondered how the US would react after finding out that their gold deposits had disappeared. Since he couldn't find diamonds, he would go steal gold. After the gold was all taken, he would go take USD from the US banks. Since you guys want to wait for me to build Luo Yu for you and I'm short on money, it should be fine to go borrow some from you. EMO soon found out from Su Yuehua that the US had their gold stored in 2 locations she knew of. One place was 24 meters under solid bedrock in southern Manhattan. There was around 8.300 tons of gold stored there with a market worth of about 165 billion US dollars. But from what Su Yuehua said afterwards, this wasn't even where the US stored the bulk of their gold. It was at most 5% of their gold, while most of the gold there belonged to international banks and some other countries. The US mainly stored their gold 50 kilometers to the southwest of Kentucky, Louisiana. There was a US Army base there, and this place was said to be the safest place in America. There was not only large amounts of gold deposited there, but also large amounts of confidential files and national treasures. This base fort was made of granite, steel rods, and cement, and took up an area of about 1.180 square meters. The gold vault door weighed about 20 or so tons, and the passwords to the door were kept by many different staff. One could only enter when all the passwords were entered at the same time. The walls outside were also reinforced with steel boards. The roof had of course received special reinforcement as well. There were patrol stations around the gold vault and stops on the road, with guards blocking anyone from coming too close. There were also 23,000 troops and 300 tanks stationed nearby the area. The place had its own emergency power supply, water system, and other facilities. It was protected very well, and naturally any touristic visits were out of question. Isn't that very precise? EMO was very satisfied with Su Yuehua's intelligence. EMO was sure that no matter how safe this base was, it couldn't be safer than the Black Sun Empire's gold vault. To EMO, it would be much easier to break into the Manhattan Gold Vault than into the one in Kentucky, but he still decided to go to Kentucky. There was not only gold there but also things important to the US there. This attracted EMO. Furthermore, the gold in there truly belonged to the US. EMO was very careful when he approached the fort, since the US's radar and surveillance systems were very advanced. To him, the hard part was getting in and not bringing out the gold. With his previous experience, EMO turned invisible as soon as he arrived above American waters. As he started reaching the fort, he had still not been found. Emo stood in the distance. The fort looked like a square governmental building. It didn't seem all that peculiar. It was about 12 meters tall and 30 meters long and wide. But he could see the armored vehicles and soldiers' training base not far away. Emo didn't try to enter from the main door. He didn't feel like putting his invisibility to the test. Ever since finding out that his invisibility under special lenses still revealed a faint shadow, he had become very careful. He got off the highway and went next to the fort, and then, with the help of the earth travel charm, he went into the earth as fast as possible. After Emo entered, he knew that although the walls of the fort were very hard, the fort was much easier to break into than the steel vault with that layer of electric alarm system had been. Was this the place they called the safest place in the US? Emo shook his head as his flying sword easily pierced through the underground layer, into the underground room of the fort. To Emo, no matter how many tanks or soldiers there were outside, they might as well all be show. Emo stood in a convoluted maze in the underground of the base. He sighed. It had been too easy to get in there. The Americans might not even find it out after he took the gold. Although the surveillance system here was also mere decoration to Emo, he didn't act carelessly. He didn't want to be caught because after this job he still wanted to go for a spin at the US banks. Emo pierced through room after room. Here and there, Emo also saw all sorts of strange bodies and heads, as well as some historical documents. They were nothing but garbage to Emo, but he did take some crowns and jewels. After breaking open a ton of rooms, Emo finally saw the gold. He didn't even bother counting it as he put everything into his ring. As Emo ravished room after room and took all that gold, he took so much that eventually he got sick of taking it. After taking about 300,000 ingots, Emo finally didn't feel like looking for more gold anymore. Who knew how much was still left? He probably took around 4,000 tons, though. After Emo had left the fort, the guards were still patrolling it with great severity, not knowing at all that the place they were guarding had had 90% of its gold stolen. Although Emo had a big harvest at the fort, he only found a couple $100 million robbing the banks. The security systems at the banks were far more threatening to him than at the fort. Emo lost interest in trying to move large amounts of USD from the banks because it was just too hard. He didn't even know what place had the greatest amount of USD. Furthermore, he truly couldn't get himself exposed. If he did, neither his own power nor Luo Yu's would be a match for the US. If he couldn't beat the US, he could run. But what about other people? Now, he only needed to let Su Yuehua find some place to sell all that gold. Gold was a solid currency, so they only needed to be a bit careful. Emo once more appeared in Chinatown in San Francisco. He had planned this before. It wasn't dark yet, but the Mingyun Tower was closed early. Emo scanned his spirit sense inside and found that there was no one there. Even that old he and the waiter were gone. Emo visited Peng Yueji's old base but found the place empty too, and it looked like it had been desolate for a while already. Emo had a bad feeling arise in his heart. He went to Hong Martial Gang's dojo, but it was in ruins. Emo went to Zhu Hongxing's turf but still didn't see anyone. What had happened there? Why hadn't Shi Kaijian reported to him? Emo then realized that he had changed his phone ever since going to Luoyu. He could only go back to Mingyu Tower with a frown on his face. As Emo was being very confused, his spirit sense suddenly picked up on a person in an alleyway a few hundred meters away. Finally someone he knew. He had given Sister Yan's picture to Luo Xian, and he still hadn't left. The next moment, he appeared in front of Luo Xian. Luo Xian, who was walking with his head down, was fraught upon being stopped, but he soon recognized the man standing in front of him. It was a being that the entire Hong Martial Gang had to look up to. Yi Qianbei. Luo Xian recognized Emo and greeted him. Emo nodded and said, "Luo Xian, I didn't expect you to still be here. Why do I not see anyone from the Tang Gang? Shi Kaijian is nowhere to be seen either. But why can't I even see anyone from your Hong Martial Gang?" Luo Xian subconsciously looked around. Emo saw this and immediately said, "You don't have to look. There is no one around. Did something happen to Shi Kaijian?" Luo Xian shook his head. Brother sure is fine. The thing is, something happened to gang leader Peng. After we fought with the mountain gang, we both had our power much weakened. But then, they teamed up with the San Francisco gang and planned on annihilating us. It seemed that the Hong Marshall gang had been annihilated. Otherwise, their bases wouldn't be so tattered. Luo Xian continued. Gang leader Zhu knew that they were no match for them, so he asked the Tang gang for help. However, gang leader Peng knew that even if the Tang gang helped, they would still be no match for the San Francisco gang. So Peng Yueji rejected? Emo asked casually. Luo Xian said sadly. Before he could even reject, the mountain gang and San Francisco gang already attacked. But what was strange was that even though the fighting that night was extremely intense, no police ever arrived. The Tang gang weren't as strong as the San Francisco gang in the first place, so being ambushed like that, eventually, Emo's eyes went cold. Eventually what? Luo Xian said dejectedly. The Tang gang was almost completely annihilated. Our gang leader Zhu was also killed. Those brothers fighting also almost all died. I was to do some business outside, and so I managed to live. How are Shi Kaizhen and Tong Zhu? Although he didn't have much of a connection with the Tang gang, Shi Kaizhen and Tong Zhu were his men. They were different from Peng Yueji. Peng Yueji had just used him to revive the Tang gang. The reason he left Shi Kaizhen and Tong Zhu to help Peng Yueji was mainly for them to find Sister Yin. Seeing that Emo wasn't asking about the well-being of gang leader Peng, Luo Xian was surprised, but he quickly reacted. He immediately replied, I don't know about Tong Zhu, but I heard gang leader Peng was heavily injured and was saved by a brother from the gang. It was said that brother Shi was also injured, but that he was saved by someone with one arm. That one-armed person was very strong and killed many of the San Francisco gang members before saving brother Shi. By the time Dick had arrived though, he had left. Dick? Emo felt like this name was really familiar somehow. Luo Xian quickly explained. He's one of the two masters of the Grey Alliance and was called the gun and knife duo together with Johnson. At the time when the Grey Alliance and Johnson were annihilated by Qianbei, he wasn't in America. After he came back and found out what had happened, he wanted revenge. The Mountain Gang and San Francisco Gang just so happened to be collaborating against the Hong Marshall Gang, so Dick joined the San Francisco Gang. Emo finally understood. So this was related to him. He didn't expect some minor character he didn't care about to have almost killed Shi Kaizhen. Who was the one-armed person who saved Shi Kaizhen, though? And why did he help him? The first person Emo thought of was Sha Wan. Had he saved Shi Kaizhen? Regardless, Emo decided to go to his territory and check. Why have you stayed? Emo looked at Luo Xian and asked. Luo Xian heard this and seemed a little uneasy. Emo waved his hand and stopped him from talking. Thanks for the info. I'll be going now. Luo Xian reacted and wanted to say something, but Emo was nowhere to be seen. Emo had guessed correctly. Shi Kaizhen had indeed been saved by Sha Wan, and so was Tong Zhu. What had confused Sha Wan, though, was that usually if something involved Emo, he would get there as soon as possible. Yet the gang battle had taken place nearly a month ago, but Emo still hadn't come. Shi Kaizhen was also confused why Emo hadn't come, and why even his phone couldn't be reached. He knew that the reason why Sha Wan had saved him was Emo had been to the 5 states before, and Sha Wan seemed to fear Emo. From Sha Wan's power, he could tell that Sha Wan seemed to be almost as strong as Emo. How could someone like him fear Emo? Regardless, Sha Wan had saved him, so he was very grateful. If it wasn't for Sha Wan, he wouldn't just have been lightly injured. He wouldn't have been able to make it out. When Emo arrived in the 5 states once again, Sha Wan was in the middle of talking to Shi Kaizhen. Neither of them had expected Emo to suddenly appear. Yi Qianbei. Sha Wan had saved Shi Kaizhen on Emo's account. He was a realistic person. If it wasn't for Emo, he wouldn't do something that was of no benefit to him. Although the San Francisco gang couldn't do anything to him, he also had people under him to worry about, and in that area the San Francisco gang was the local head snake. Shi Kaizhen hadn't been injured heavily, and with a master like Sha Wan, he had recovered a long time ago. When he saw Emo appear, he quickly greeted him with, "Brother Yi." Tong Zhu isn't here? Yemo saw that Shi Kaijian was fine and felt assured. Shi Kaijian had been doing things for him, and if something happened to him, he would feel guilty. Zhu Zi went out hunting for information. As soon as he said this, Tong Zhu's voice sounded, "Brother Shi, I saw Dick tonight, gang leader Xia. You're also here." Tong Zhu then saw Yemo and called out in joyful surprise, "Brother Yi, you're finally here." Yemo looked at Tong Zhu and patted his shoulder. It was his fault that Shi Kaijian and Tong Zhu ended up like this. "So, what happened?" Yemo looked at Shi Kaijian and asked. Although Luo Xian had explained it clearly, Yemo still wanted to hear Shi Kaijian's story. Shi Kaijian and Tong Zhu pretty much said the same thing, with the added detail that Dick had apparently kept looking for Shi Kaijian even after knowing that he had been saved. Dick wouldn't rest until he captured Shi Kaijian and interrogated him on the person behind the destruction of the Grey Alliance. Due to the San Francisco gang's pressure, even Sha-One's business was also affected. "You're still in the human trafficking business?" Yemo felt a little repulsed by this business, but Sha-One had saved Shi Kaijian, so that made him feel conflicted. Sha-One quickly said, "No, ever since I saw Qianbei last time, I listened to Qianbei's words and stopped that business. I'm in weapons trade now." "You're Trodong weapons? Can you get the latest weapons too?" Yemo suddenly thought of Luo Yu. Although Luo Yu had bought some weapons, those were actually the weapons from which others wanted to upgrade. Countries wouldn't sell weapons to Luo Yu, so most of their weapons had to come from underground dealings. Before Sha-One replied, Shi Kaijian said, "The US is very different to China in this aspect. They are the ones being supplied by major weapon manufacturers. The US government buys from them. Of course, all of these manufacturers have some political background, so due to their private connections, it's that much easier for the US to get the latest weapons." "That's right, like Thor, Universal Motion, ATK, etc. Warfare weapon manufacturers are very close to the government and the military, but that's all only a secondary point. However, the large-scale weapons are indeed restricted and we can't get them, but we can get some lighter weapons easily," Sha-One said. Yemo nodded. "In that case, Sha-One, you will be responsible for getting me the latest weapons. As for those large-scale weapon blueprints, I will get them from the weapon manufacturers myself. My company moved to Luo Yu now, you probably know, right?" Sha-One had always wanted to mention this, so now that Yemo mentioned it, he was very excited. This time, he didn't hesitate and said, "Yi Qianbei, I of course know of Luo Yu Corporation, and I wish to join Luo Yu City, Qianbei." Hearing this, Shi Kaijian and Tong Zhu also got excited. They'd long since known about the legendary story of Luo Yu Pharmaceuticals. Even if they were already Yemo's men, that only made them want to join Luo Yu all the more. But Yemo was talking to Sha-One now, so they couldn't really butt in. Yemo knew what they wanted and smiled. "Of course, since I have mentioned this, it means I am willing to let you join Luo Yu City. If you want to go back to Luo Yu now, that's fine, and if you stay here, then help me take notice of the US's weapons and get me some of the latest weapons. If the US has any new breakthroughs in technology, make sure to tell me immediately." From a personal perspective, Yemo had to admit that America was a very open country and in that sense much better than many other countries. If not for them trying to devour Luo Yu, he wouldn't attack them either. But no matter how strong they were, if they wanted to attack Luo Yu, then don't blame him for attacking first. And, in their heart, the Americans believed that they were the big brother of the world, and Yemo didn't like that. "That's fine. I'm willing to stay here to continue the firearms business," Sha-One said immediately, and Shi Kaijian and Tong Zhu wanted that too. Yemo would of course not mistreat them for being willing to stay and help. He made 3 defensive bracelets for them which could save each of them at least once. Although Shi Kaijian and Tong Zhu didn't really know how it worked, they had seen Yemo shoot fireballs before. Not to mention all the legendary things Yemo had done, they felt like Yemo was a very mysterious and powerful person. Sha-One felt reverence towards Yemo. He still didn't understand how Yemo had gotten from Chun and to Hong Kong in such a brief moment. Thus, he would think of everything Yemo gave him as very precious. Despite Sha-One's rejection, Yemo still left $50 million with him. Yemo had gotten this from Jason. He rarely used money anyway, and if he wanted Sha-1 to do things wholeheartedly, he needed to give him some money. I still wish to get the large-scale weapon blueprints now. Do you know where the weapon manufacturers keep these things? When Emo asked this, the three turned into stone. The first to react was Sha-1. Chenbei, you're joking, right? Emo smiled. Of course I'm not. I have to take care of that today, because tonight, I'll be going for a spin at the San Francisco gang. The three thought Emo was crazy. Go to the US weapon dealers and steal their blueprints? But soon they realized that Emo wasn't joking. Emo waved his hand. Just give me the details, and I will think of a way. Emo felt that he hadn't done enough in America yet. When Sha-1 left to find information, Shi Kai-jen patted his head and said, Brother Yi, you told me to search for Sister Yen before you left. I found something, but before I could report to you, the San Francisco gang invaded. Emo was shocked. He knew that Sister Yen could quite possibly be his blood mother. Hearing this, he had a certain indescribable feeling in his heart. Ever since he had met Emo, Shi Kai-jen had never seen such an expression on his face. He didn't dare hesitate and said, A month ago, I found someone who had been part of the Chinese gang in the past. He was called Lu Shan. After the gang war, the gang leader did indeed send someone to take Sister Yen away. After the Chinese gang was annihilated, some brothers escaped. The Lu Shan I met was one of them. He encountered Sister Yen on the way as well, that person protecting her. When the three met, they realized they had no money, so Sister Yen took off her bracelet for them to sell. But after that brother left, he never came back. They waited for a long time, but the person still didn't come back. A while later, they heard gunshots and didn't dare to keep waiting. It was up to Lu Shan to protect Sister Yen then, but he was quite loyal to the Chinese gang. So he brought Sister Yen to Mexica town and parted with Sister Yen. Where is this Lu Shan? After a long while, Emo asked subconsciously. Shi Kai-jen said guiltily. I found him in Dali City, but the second time I went to see him, he had already moved away. I think he doesn't want to have any relations with the Chinese gang anymore. I understand him, so I didn't go find him. Then, Shi Kai-jen took out an accurate map and handed it to Emo. This is the location of that Mexica town. The red dot is the place where they parted ways. Emo kept staring at the map with such focus that he didn't even know when Sha-1 came in. After a long while, Emo put away the map and felt worried for Sister Yen. Although he came from Luo Yu continent, he still valued sentiment. Otherwise, he wouldn't treat Yi Ling and Yi Zifeng so nice. If Sister Yen was really his mother, then that would mean she was someone with important blood relations with him. Who knew if that abandoned son Emo wasn't really his past life? Yichinbei, I got this information ready. Please take a look. Seeing Emo return to his senses, Sha-1 quickly handed his findings to Emo. Emo took the stack and put it away without looking at it carefully. After a while, he said, I'll be going out for a while. As for the San Francisco gang, that can wait until I come back. Shi Kai-jen guessed that Emo would probably be going to that town. He hesitated for a moment but eventually said nothing. Emo had come for that Sister Yen last time, meaning that there was some close relation between them. Other things could wait for after he finished dealing with that. Emo had regained his composure and noticed that Shi Kai-jen wanted to say something. He asked immediately, What do you want to say? Brother Yi, there was one more thing that I didn't find the right moment to say yet. Huang Mei came back to look for you once after you left. She was very disappointed to hear that you had left, Shi Kai-jen replied. Huang Mei. Emo frowned. He didn't know that woman, and this was in the U.S. He didn't remember meeting any women in the U.S. What did she want from him? Seeing this, Shi Kai-jen said, She was the woman sitting behind Zhu Hongsheng when we first entered the Hong martial gang. Emo immediately recalled. That woman had seemed to be helping him no matter the circumstance. He felt strange why a woman he didn't know would be helping him that much. She might have looked average, but she sure was meticulous. Thinking about this, Emo asked, How has she been after the Hong martial gang was annihilated? Shi Kai-jen immediately replied, She is very smart. The day that Zhu Hongsheng rejected her proposal, she immediately left the gang. Later, when Zhu Hongxing realized his mistake, he couldn't find her anymore. Emo nodded. She was quite decisive and had left as soon as she realized Zhu Hongxing wasn't worth helping. But why did she want to find him? He wasn't a gang leader or anything. What did she say? Emo asked again. Shi Kaijian said, she just asked whether the main reason for you coming to San Francisco had been to look for Sister Yen and when you would come back next. She knew the first part anyway, so I didn't hide it, but as for when you would come back again, I said I didn't know. After she left, I never heard from her again. Emo didn't ask anything else. This Huang Mei was quite astute, unlike that Peng Yueji. If she could go help Su Yuehua, it wouldn't be bad. But since she had already left, there was no point in thinking about it. Compared to other places in the US or even to other towns in San Francisco, Mexico was extremely basic. The streets seemed messy, the buildings were old, etc. Emo stood at the door of a cafe. It had been newly built, but the Shi Kaijian had marked on the map conformed to that place. Emo sighed. So many years had passed, it was highly unlikely she would have stayed at this town, and even if she had, it wouldn't be easy to find her. Emo ordered himself some coffee after coming in. It was full of bubbles at the top, so he stirred it and took a sip. It was bitter, he didn't like this flavor. He casually picked up the newspaper on his table. The headline was a picture of the U.S. Bank Reserve and a dug-open wall of the gold vault. Emo smiled. They had found out quickly. It was only the next morning, yet the newspapers had come out already. He couldn't understand the English, but he could guess what it was about. Not long after Emo sat down, a blonde girl sat down opposite to Emo with a cup of coffee and asked in English, "Are you Chinese?" Emo understood that much, but he didn't want to talk to her. So he pretended he didn't understand and kept drinking the coffee he didn't like. "May I ask if you're Chinese?" The blonde girl saw that Emo didn't answer her, so she asked again, but this time, she used Chinese. Emo nodded helplessly. "Yes, what do you want?" "Oh, great. I want you to help me." No. I think I can help you, dash. These words bewildered Emo. She was asking him for help? He had just met her. Also, he didn't need her help with anything. Before Emo said anything, though, she whispered in Yemo's ears, "Can we talk outside? I think you might be interested." Emo was already in a bad mood, and now this woman was just making it worse. Emo got up and dumped a $100 bill on the bar and walked out. He only had $100 bills on him. Seeing this, the blonde woman quickly took the bill and paid with her card. The waiter saw her with Emo and thought they were together, so he didn't think too much about it. After the blonde walked out of the cafe, she suddenly came up to Emo and grabbed his arm, intentionally rubbing her huge bosom on Yemo's arm. Emo frowned. He had no interest in this woman. Compared to Ning Qingxue, Emo didn't even want to look at this woman. Emo was sure now that she had to be some street prostitute. However, he felt strange because they usually came out at night, and this woman was already out in the morning. Emo pulled her arm away and questioned unhappily, "What do you want to say? If you want to sleep together or something, then don't bother. I'm not interested in you." Unexpectedly, though, the woman had an embarrassed look and quickly said with a smile, "Oh, I know, but I really like you. You're a true man. You have the smell of a real man." Emo sneered. "I repeat, I am not interested. Please go away." The blonde suddenly said, "It's quite rare for a Chinese person to come to this town. You here on holiday. Perhaps I can show you around town. I know of a lot of places other people don't. The ghost house, spinning battlefield, underground fighting. Anywhere you want to go, I can bring you there, and I charge very little. Just give me 300 no, $200, and I can serve you for a day." Emo thought, this is my first time in town, and it's not like I'm familiar with the place. If someone could show me around, it would save me a lot of time. And the blonde girl's Chinese was fluent, so they could communicate just fine. Thinking about this, Emo suddenly asked, "What's your name? And are you in need of a lot of money?" Hearing this, the blonde quickly said, "I'm Annie, and yes, I really do need all the money I can get. If you get tired, I can even go to bed with you. You just need to give me $200. No need to go to bed with me. First, just tell me if there are a lot of Chinese here, and where do they usually live? Also, how much do you know about the history of this town? How long have you been living here? Emo asked. The blonde quickly answered, I was born here. My father is a blacksmith, so I know the place very well. Just like dash. She wanted to use a fancy metaphor. But her knowledge was limited, and she couldn't think of one. Emo didn't mind. He nodded and said, Take me to the Chinese region. There's someone I wish to find. Find someone? Oh, great. As long as you're looking for someone Chinese, I can help you find them. You know, people call me the White Chinese. Annie kept talking. If you want to find a Chinese person, you need to go to the Mengtang Street underground boxing ring. That place has the second greatest amount of Chinese people in town. Perhaps the person you're looking for is there. There was no way Sister Yen would be there. Emo shook his head without thinking. Why take me the second best place? Take me to the place with the most Chinese. Oh, okay. Mister, what's your name? Annie asked. I'm Emo. Now, just take me to the place with the most Chinese. After Emo spoke with her for a while, he found that she wasn't as annoying as he had thought. Perhaps she simply really needed money. If she could take him to find all the Chinese around, he wouldn't mind giving her some money. Annie said, Mr. Emo, the place with the most Chinese is the Chinese backstreet, but we have to pass the underground boxing ring to get there. That way, we will also spend less time to see all the Chinese we can. Emo looked at her glimmering eyes and knew that even if she was right, there must be some other reason she persisted on going there. To Emo, no matter what it was, he wouldn't care at all. As though realizing her words might arouse some misunderstanding, Annie quickly explained, You can see Chinese masters fight there, but if you're really not interested, we don't have to go. It's fine, we might as well go. Emo waved his hand casually. No matter what masters were there, he wouldn't have to worry. This was only some small American town, after all. Seeing this, Annie was even happier and exclaimed, Oh God, you're the best. What a gentleman. All right, just hurry up and go. And call me Mr. Yi from now on. Although Annie was clearly in financial trouble, she wasn't depressed about it at all and made things quite cheerful. Emo also felt a lot better. Hey, sweetheart. A white man chewing gum walked by Annie and Emo and said with very broken Chinese. Annie ignored the man and pointed at an alleyway, saying, You can enter the underground boxing ring form there. Let's go. The man saw Annie ignore him, so he walked past Emo and Annie and also entered the small alleyway. They only walked for a bit before people started brushing past them hurriedly. The Chinese amounted to 40% of everyone present. No wonder even some random white man knew a bit of Chinese. After walking past the alleyway, Annie took Emo to a very big hall. There were a lot of people there, and it was very boisterous and rowdy. Small stalls were everywhere, people were drinking, playing card games, eating, and even taking drugs. Emo found the place had people of all sorts of skin colors. Annie smiled to Emo apologetically. Mr. Yi, it'll get better after we properly enter. This hall is a bit too chaotic, but there are also Chinese here. Perhaps there might be someone you know. Annie seemed to know a lot of people here. As soon as she came in, a bunch of people started greeting her. But Annie knew what her main purpose was, and seeing that Emo didn't like this place, she took him further underground quickly. At the entrance, Annie stopped and looked at Emo awkwardly. Mr. Yi, could you lend me $200 for now? Trust me, I won't cheat you out of your money. A couple $100 was like a couple of leaves to Emo. He took out $200 and handed them to Annie. Thank you, Mr. Yi. Let's go in. Annie's expression seemed like she didn't just get 200 but 20K. Emo sighed. Those who were content with what the small things they got were always happy. The two came to the door and Annie gave the $200 entrance fee and took Emo in. Emo saw the boisterous crowd and immediately knew that Annie probably had her own thing going on and that was why she had wanted to come there. But Emo saw that there were indeed a lot of Chinese. A few of them were shouting in front of the stage. Annie, you're here so early, a very fluent Chinese speaker said. It was an Asian young man in his 20s. He seemed to have some head injuries and was bandaged. He looked at Emo. Annie was going to make Emo wait while she looked for the young man. But he had come out unexpectedly. Annie gave $300 to the guy awkwardly and said, "Emo is my new friend. Don't worry about anything and go sign up first. I came to see your match tonight." Emo realized that $300 had completely come from him. The young man hesitated before taking the money and said, "I won't let you and Sister Cece down." Then, he turned into the crowd and entered the competing area. "Sorry, Mr. Yi. I might have tricked you a bit. But don't worry. I will take you through this entire town for sure. If the person you're looking for is really here, I will find them for you." Annie apologized. Meanwhile, as Emo looked at that young man, he felt a sense of familiarity. His name is Xianxia. He came here because he needs a lot of money, at least tens of thousands of dollars. "I want to help him, but I don't have money either," Annie explained. Annie didn't really grow up the American way either. Her father was from Hong Kong and came to this town in the US many years ago. Her father met her mother, and they got married, but as soon as Annie was born, her mother passed away. Although her father wasn't able to give her the best life then, they had still been able to survive. But due to the economic crisis, her father went bankrupt and could only live in the poor region of the Chinese backstreet. Due to them living in an off-the-grid way, her father and her didn't get much help from the government either. Furthermore, her father was an alcoholic, so most of their money was used for buying alcohol. She had very little money to spend. Annie met the sister and brother of the Yin family in the Chinese backstreet, and she fell in love with Xianxia. Xianxia and his sister needed money desperately, but she had no way to help, so Xianxia could only come fight here. Because he had some power and 2 or 3 normal people were no match for him, Annie supported him to come fight here. Recently, the town started holding a Boxing King of Mexico town tournament. The first place could get you $100,000 US. The second and third could get you $50,000 and $30,000 respectively. Thus, Xianxia had signed up without hesitation. Although the sign-up fee was only $300, the competitor needed a backer who also needed to pay $1,000 as insurance. The two of them only had $1,000 together, so Annie had gone out to earn some money somehow. Hearing this, Emo was speechless. This woman went out to sleep with others to help the person she loved raise money. Should she be praised? Or was she an idiot? Emo soon thought that perhaps she simply thought differently to him. Perhaps she thought sleeping with someone wasn't too big of a deal? Although Emo couldn't understand her actions, he knew that everyone had their own means to keep in mind, and perhaps from her perspective, she was doing the right thing. Seeing Emo be silent, Annie felt like she should keep apologizing. She had already given the money to Xianxia to sign up. If this Mr. Yi didn't want her to lead the way anymore, she wouldn't know how to give the 200 back. Emo looked over and saw a Chinese guy get beaten down from the stage. Emo had been watching the fight ever since he came in. The Chinese guy spat blood and he slowly stopped breathing. The black man who had won was full of excitement. Many people threw money on the stage and a woman wearing a bikini picked the money up. She did all sorts of seductive poses to attract people to throw more money. People casually got beaten to death? Emo looked at those people in shock. Noticing Emo's surprise, Annie quickly said, "If you want to go further inside to take a look, you have to pay more. By the way, just like that man, most winners get rewarded even if they don't reach the top 3. The government doesn't care?" Emo asked with a frown. Annie shook her head. "Of course they don't. Sometimes some people come here for a check, but before they do, everyone here gets notified, so there can't be any problems at all." "Aren't you worried that Xianxia might also be beaten up like that?" Emo thought it weird that being Xianxia's girlfriend, she wasn't being the first to stop him from going up there. Instead, Annie seemed very supportive of Xianxia fighting. Annie shook her head. "Xianxia can win. I trust him, so why should I worry?" Emo was speechless. But he didn't care either way and just scanned the underground fighting ring. It was just as he had thought. Although there were a lot of Chinese here, he didn't recognize anyone. In fact, there weren't that many chintz women. "Let's go. Take me to the Chinese backstreet," Emo said. He had some hopes for that place. If Sister Yen was in the town, there was a 90% chance she was there, because that was the ghetto for Chinese people. She had come there by herself, so she wouldn't have had anywhere else to go. The Chinese backstreet really was a slum indeed. Seeing the place, Yemo realized that even in the US, not every place was rich. The street was narrow and dirty and actually pretty hidden. If it wasn't for Annie taking him there, he would never have known about the place. 80% of the people there were Chinese, with a few black and white people. Yemo subconsciously looked at Annie. Her father was from Hong Kong, so why did she look completely white? Yemo even considered the thought that her mother might have cheated on her father. Annie was obviously very welcome. On the street, many Chinese would greet her. Annie had a smile on her face and talked with everyone. No wonder her Chinese was so good. Annie. Something happened to Xianxia. Hurry up and find her brother. A Chinese man rushed over with a trolley and stopped Annie. Something happened to Sister Cici? Then, Annie didn't even say anything to Yemo and ran out in a hurry. Yemo saw this and didn't blame her. But Xianxia and Xianxia, the two added together formed Xijia, which meant the longing for home. The man was about to leave when Yemo suddenly asked, "Where is Annie going? What happened?" The man studied Yemo and didn't hesitate much since Yemo had come together with Annie. He said, "Xianxia was working at a restaurant, and I heard she offended a customer and needed to compensate a lot of money. So she's being held back at the restaurant." Where is the restaurant? Also, isn't America supposed to be a very lawful society? How come something like that is happening? Yemo asked in confusion. The man had a face full of contempt and said coldly, "Lawful? That's only for some people. I think you've been reading too much democratic propaganda. It's as easy as drinking water for rich people to have you put in jail here. Young man, you must have only just arrived here, right?" Then, the man walked off and didn't even tell Yemo where the restaurant was. Yemo felt helpless. He knew he didn't understand life in the US, but even he knew that there was a difference in the lives of the rich and poor. Although that man's words had been a bit extreme, he wasn't completely wrong. Yemo stopped a middle-aged lady and asked her about the restaurant. This time, Yemo was pointed the right direction. As soon as Yemo got to the restaurant, his spirit sense noticed a white man on the second floor raging at a girl in her 20s. But Yemo didn't understand a thing he said. A Chinese man beside him was also joining him in cursing at the girl. Annie held the girl, who had a slap mark on her face and seemed full of worry. Yemo was surprised. Annie had been a very optimistic American girl all along, so he felt strange seeing the worry on her face. Yemo went up to the second floor and said to Annie, "Annie, you took my money, so why aren't you leading the way for me now?" Annie was already worried and at a loss about what to do. Now that Yemo suddenly appeared, she became even more worried. "I'm sorry, Mr. Yi. Please wait for me outside for a bit. I will be out soon." Annie knew she wouldn't be getting out anytime soon, but she knew who that white man was. Perhaps Yemo would be dragged into trouble eventually too. What is going on? Yemo looked at the girl who had been slapped and walked over. Seeing this, Annie could only say, "Sister Cici broke the customer's belongings, and she can't afford them." Yemo immediately understood what was going on. After Yemo's sudden intervention, the white man and Chinese man finally reacted. "Who are you?" The middle-aged man studied Yemo and asked in contempt. "I'm a friend of Annie's. What did they break? And why are you hitting people?" Yemo scanned the man and asked casually. Yemo soon found that the white man had a gun in his pocket, and not far away stood two robust-looking guys. Hearing this, the middle-aged man sneered and said slowly, "Xianxia is a worker at my restaurant, and Edward is our honorable guest. Xianxia broke his white jade statue. Don't you agree that needs to be compensated? Because Xianxia is my worker, I'm only asking her to pay 10% of it. The remaining amount will be paid by me. But if she doesn't even want to pay 10% of it, what should I do? If she keeps refusing, I can only send her to jail. Mr. Ross, you know she can't pay that much, yet you still ask her to pay 1 million. Moreover, can that thing really be worth 10 million? You're doing this intentionally, aren't you? Your dash? Annie wanted to argue but then looked at the white man and swallowed back her words. You don't have the money? Ross glanced at Annie and Xianxia and sneered but didn't say anything. After Emo came, the white man no longer cursed at Xianxia. Instead, he signaled for his bodyguards to block the entrance downstairs. What is this thing that has a 10% cost of 1 million? Emo suddenly asked again. Ross sneered. However much the customer says it's worth, that's how much it's worth. If you can't pay what you broke, shouldn't you at least know how to kneel down? Suddenly, Ross felt that he actually shouldn't be answering Emo. Who was this guy and how dare he question him like that? He scanned Emo and said, Who are you to ean so anyway? Do you want to pay for it? If you don't, what's the use of asking this and that? Emo smiled. I want to pay, but I don't see the object in question. If it really is worth 1 million, perhaps I will pay you. Ross wanted to speak in derision, but before he could say anything much, he froze. Emo was holding 3 stacks of freshly printed dollars. There had to be at least 20K in his hands. Before anyone could react, though, Emo waved his hand, and the money magically disappeared. Ross's eyes went green. If this young man could casually take out 20K, he must have more. Those dollars had seemed fresh from the bank. Edward also saw the USD, and his eyes started glimmering, but he soon covered up his greed. His eyes moved around as he began scheming. Emo looked at the two and sneered. It was just 20K, yet these two were getting greedy for it. It was impossible for them to have a statue worth 10 million. Annie's eyes also brightened up. She couldn't understand how Emo could have put the money in his thin layer of clothes. But she didn't accept Emo to be this wealthy. Everyone used credit cards, so who would carry so much cash like that? But Annie knew the situation wasn't good, because Edward had also seen the money on Emo. And Edward was a notorious man in Mexico. Xianxia subconsciously looked at Annie. She knew all of Annie's friends. Since when did she know someone this rich? Before Ross could say anything, Emo continued. Since you want me to compensate, shouldn't you at least show me what I'm compensating? I need to know where it's broken. If he weren't concerned that Annie and Xianxia might be affected, he would have killed the two already. Things wouldn't be so troublesome then. Oh, of course. Ross then took out a white jade statue from the room behind him and passed it to Emo. This is it. Edward spent 10 million to get this from an auction. It's from ancient Roman ruins. Emo sneered. He didn't even need to look at it to know that it had been made from a modern type of glass. The thing was worth at most $10. Emo saw a crack at the back. These two were obviously scamming Xianxia, but Xianxia didn't look rich. In that case, why were they scamming her? Emo looked at Xianxia. Although she looked clean and decent, it wasn't like she was mind-blowingly pretty. How could someone like Edward and Ross be interested in her? Emo then looked at the statue. He was a cultivator who could make proper high-level artifacts. The little thingy was repaired in a brief moment. He looked at the statue and then said, Ross, I don't see any damage on this. I just took a strand of hair away, and the statue seems perfectly fine. Maybe you saw wrong. Perfectly fine? If that statue is perfectly fine, I'll eat it and give you 1 million. Ross sneered and took the statue from Emo. He glanced at Emo, ready to point out the crack. Xianxia also looked at Emo in stupefaction. The lie would be broken immediately, so what was the point of telling it? She had seen the crack herself. But Ross had to be disappointed. He looked again and again yet didn't see any cracks. He turned it around and around, but there were no marks at all. Had it really been a strand of hair? There was no way. This wasn't good. Thinking for a second, Ross simply dropped the statue. Like that, the glass would crack for sure. Ross sneered. Even if there wasn't a crack before, now that it will, as long as I deny that it dropped, what can you do? But before the statue fell to the ground, Emo caught it with his foot and then flicked it into his hand. Emo held the thing and sneered. Mr. Ross, this statue is perfectly fine, so if you drop it on the ground, you will have to pay for it. Ross looked at Emo and was dazed. He hadn't expected his trump card to fail. Emo passed the statue to Ross again. Mr. Ross, if you drop it again, That means you're throwing it around intentionally. Ross gave the statue to Edward. Edward also looked at it and confirmed that there were no cracks at all. Had they really seen wrongly? Since we were wrong, never mind. Edward sneered. He would think of another way. Xianxia's whole family was here anyway. They couldn't escape. This youth in front of him looked rich, though. He wouldn't be letting him go. Although he didn't care about that $20,000 of cash. If the guy could take it out so casually, he definitely had more. Huh? It's over just like that? Annie almost screamed. Xianxia also felt like she was dreaming. With Edward having said that, Ross could only glare at Xianxia and say, "You were lucky this time." Emo suddenly intervened. "Mr. Ross, this isn't over yet. The misunderstanding before was about the white statue, but we haven't resolved you hitting Ms. Xianxia yet." Everyone looked on dumbly at Emo. Who was Edward? Who could dare question one of his men in front of him? That was asking to die. What's the big deal with me beating her? She did something wrong. Can't she be beaten then? Ross was so angry he started laughing. Emo's tone went cold. What did Xianxia do wrong? She broke. Ross suddenly stopped. The white jade statue was completely fine. Ross looked at Edward and knew that their target should now be changed to Emo. Thinking about this, Ross quickly took out a $100 bill and gave it to Xianxia, saying, "One slap for $100, you're lucky." Emo took that $100 bill and gave it a look, after which he took out a $100 bill from his own pocket and gave it to Ross. "How could I take your money?" "Here, I'll give you this 100. Ross subconsciously took the money, sneering, "I thought you were tough, but you don't even dare take my money." Slap, slap. 2 slaps landed on Ross's face, making his mind stop for a moment. He was spinning on the spot. He really didn't get why he was being hit suddenly. "Although I have quite a bit of money, I can't waste too much on a pig. 2 slaps for 200 it is," Emo said. But these 2 slaps were of a different caliber. Ross spat out a bunch of teeth and felt a burning sensation on his face. He couldn't even speak as he slumped to the ground. Everyone was dazed. No one had expected Emo to have the guts to hit someone in front of Edward, and so harshly at that. Edward's face went bleak. Just when he wanted to speak, Emo stopped him. "Edward, I'm very interested in your white jade statue. I believe it's very valuable, and I'm wondering whether you have any more valuable antiques over at your place. I'd gladly go back with you and buy some from you. Of course, as long as it's valuable, the price is negotiable." What? This young man wanted to go back to his place and buy his antiques? Edward wanted to laugh. There was still such good luck in the world, and he had encountered it? He had been troubled trying to come up with a way to bring the young man away all along. The young man knew the jade statue was worth 10 million yet still wanted to go with him. Didn't that mean he had a lot more money? Thinking about it, Edward's heart was on fire. While he was getting excited, Emo sighed. "I wanted to buy some treasures from America before going back, and today I finally found someone who owns real treasures." Then, Emo took out a card and waved it in front of Ross. "I really need to thank you for giving me the opportunity to get to know Mr. Edward. Otherwise, where would I go to spend all this money?" It was as though Emo had so much money that he didn't even know how to spend it. Edward's bleak expression disappeared immediately. It turned into a fervent smile. He looked at Emo as though he was looking at dollar bills. "Mr. Annie was dazed. She really didn't get how Emo could be this dumb. He was asking to die trying to do business with Edward. Xianxia was also worried. She didn't know Emo, but even if she did and she tried to stop him from making Edward earn a fortune, her family wouldn't live to see tomorrow's sun, and this young man would still be tricked into doing business with Edward afterwards. Before Annie could finish, Emo said, "Annie, wait for me at Backstreet. I'll come back immediately after completing this business with Edward." Just as he was about to leave with Edward, Emo seemed to have thought of something and turned back to Ross and smiled. "I almost forgot. You said that you will eat the statue if there was no marks on it and give me 1 million. But the white statue is worth so much, so of course I can't let you eat it. Although 1 million is just change to me, but it's still my money. I will have to take it, Mr. Ross." Ross covered his mouth and wanted to go to the hospital as soon as possible, but he didn't dare to move. This youth was really asking him for 1 million? Was he crazy? You don't want to give it to me? Seeing how Ross wasn't talking, Emo didn't leave with Edward and walked back in front of Ross again. Ross looked pitifully at Edward. He knew that Edward was going to do business with Emo now and wasn't going to do anything to him, but 1 million was a big sum to him. His total fortune amounted to only 2 million. Ross, you said it, so you should give it to him. Edward's words made him understand that all hope was lost. He hatefully transferred Emo 1 million. That represented many years of his savings. Emo waved the card in his hand again. Ross, to be honest, 1 million is like a drop of water in the sea in my account. It's your honor for me to be taking your money. Mr. Edward, let's go do business. This place is too boring. Xianxia and Annie couldn't do anything as they watched Emo and Edward leave. Annie, who is this person? How did you meet him? Xianxia asked desperately. Annie said, I needed a couple $100, so I found him. What, Annie? Don't tell me you. Xianxia's face changed drastically. She knew her brother was in a relationship with Annie. If Annie had gone to bed with someone else, what would she do? Annie had indeed planned on doing that. The reason why she chose to do it in the morning and with a Chinese man was because Xianxia needed the money by tonight. She also thought that someone who was up that early wouldn't be too lustful of a person. But those who lived in the town all had a very loose lifestyle and thus wouldn't wake up early. Emo was a foreign Chinese man, and he looked clean. When she approached Emo, she did indeed like the refreshing smell on him. Going to bed with someone she didn't dislike while earning the money she desperately needed, of course. That was more than Annie could have hoped for. She just hadn't expected Emo to be unwilling. Even though Annie didn't really care about it. When she saw Xianxia's face, she immediately knew that Xianxia was disgusted by it. So she waved her hand and denied it. No, I didn't go to bed with him. How could I? I was just showing him the way. Hearing this, Xianxia finally breathed a sigh of relief and asked, You were showing him the way? Our town is so small. Why would he need you to show him the way? I don't know. He said he's called Emo and he's here to look for someone. That person is Chinese too, so I took him to the underground boxing ring and then to Chinese backstreet. Annie said. Suddenly, the man with the trolley rushed in, and as he saw that Annie and Xianxia were fine, he felt relieved. Uncle Duh, thank you for today, Xianxia said. Cici, you're fine? That's great. Your auntie heard what happened and wanted to come look for you too, but she's a bit weak and fainted, Uncle Duh said quickly. Huh, auntie fainted? Xianxia immediately ran back to her house. Annie also followed. Mexico might have been only a small and poor town in the U.S. There was one significant figure there, Edward. Although he wasn't that significant, his family, the Boer family, were a member of the famous Black Hand gang in the U.S. In reality, Edward no longer counted as a member of the Boer family, but other people didn't know that. The reason why Mexico town had stayed the way it was greatly due to Edward. Edward used his family's name to earn money in the town, but since he never stepped out of bounds, he'd stayed on good terms with the local government. At times, they would even work together. The largest private manor in town Alsai belonged to Edward. He had around 40 to 50 men working for him. Sometimes, he would even commit some robberies at nearby towns, but what was clever about him was that he never touched the government's bottom line. Since Emo had come all the way into his manor and the people outside were all his men, Edward didn't even bother putting up an act. He was sure that no matter how good Emo was at explaining himself, he would have to give Edward the money obediently with his means. Edward, your house is really big. You must have earned a lot in this town, Emo suddenly said. Edward shook his head. This Chinese young man was probably dumb. He didn't even understand that he had fallen into a hunter's trap. Edward couldn't wait to see how this young man would be begging him for mercy. I think that compared to my manor, you would be much more interested in my collection. Many look like mere glass but are actually beautiful antiques. I'm sure you would love to buy them. Ha ha ha. Edward laughed. What he hadn't expected was that the young man would nod and seriously say, Yes, compared to antiques, I in fact prefer glass collectibles. Glass products need to be modeled, burned, and even intricately marked. They are much harder to make than those antiques you can just dig out from underground. Edward was stunned. Was this guy really an idiot? Emo sneered. He knew that the reason why Edward had brought him here was to force him to give up all his money. Emo wasn't a cold-hearted person. He could see how much authority Edward had in this town, and that if he left just like that, Annie and Xianxia would be doomed. Hence, Emo couldn't leave just like that. Moreover, he could maybe even earn a little fortune here on the side. The moment Edward spoke, Emo knew that the man would be going for the attack soon. This guy was really desperate. He couldn't even wait for them to go inside. Emo wanted to sneer at him, but suddenly stopped in his tracks. Seeing Emo stop, Edward thought that Emo had realized that he was going to harm him and that he wanted to run. So he had been acting dumb. Edward signaled to the people at the door, and the gates were immediately closed. But what unexpectedly, Emo didn't try to leave at all. Instead, he started walking faster towards his manor, as though he were attracted by the beauty of it. Edward was in fact right. Emo had truly been attracted indeed. More than that, he was shocked. Edward's manor was full of lush green plants and fresh air that was of unimaginable quality. Emo was feeling much stronger spirit chi than on the outside. That's right, spirit chi. What shocked Emo even more was that it was as though all the plants in Edward's manor were being fed with spirit water. Could this be a spirit or mine? Or is there a spirit well? Emo was dazed and excited. If not for him being super lucky and having a good heart, how could he ever have found a place like this? Mr. Edward, your place is just too nice. I love it already. Emo cooled his heart and acted as though he hadn't seen the men behind him. Edward smiled bleakly. Heh, that's great. Since you love it so much, go ahead and take a good look. Emo sent his spirit sense out but found no spirit wells or spirit mines. What was this? Mr. Edward, am I imagining things, or are your flowers and plants different from others? I feel like the air here is great, Emo said casually. Ha ha ha. Although Emo was already dead meat to him, Edward didn't want to pass up on the chance to show off. He laughed and said, I've had specialists take special care of the place, and it's perfect for living. Emo thought for a while and then asked in confusion, Mr. Edward, what is your secret to such a good environment? Of course, if you're willing to tell me your secret, it'd be more than worth it to give you tens of millions for it. How much you give won't be up to you. Edward snarled and then turned to the men behind him, ordering them, drag him in. I want to see just how much I can get out of him. Wow, you're boring. Emo looked at Edward and shook his head. Before Edward could react, Emo shot out a couple of fireballs, and those 7 men were quickly turned to dust. Edward looked at his men as they disappeared in the blink of an eye and rubbed his eyes, thinking he was seeing things. The next moment, Emo held Edward's neck and dragged him around his manor. A short while later, Edward realized that all of his men had been turned to dust, except for some servants. Emo then dragged him to the guest hall and dumped him on the ground. Edward just realized what predicament he had put himself into. This fucking Chinese, what magic was he using? He was killing people without leaving even the slightest of marks behind. He was too scary. Sir, excuse me, sir. I have large amounts of antiques here. No, actually, they're all glassware. But if you like them, you can take them all. Edward didn't dare stand up nor even wipe the sweat from his head. Emo picked up an ashtray and threw it on Edward's head. Are you an idiot? Glassware I can find everywhere on the streets. Do I need to come to your place to buy them? No, I have money too. At least tens of millions of dollars. I can give it all to you. And if you like this mansion, I can also give it to you. Edward quickly changed the topic. Emo shook his head. With the size of this mansion, he had thought Edward would have at least a couple $100 million. Yet he only had mere tens of millions? What a poor guy. But something was always better than nothing. So Emo threw a card in Edward's direction. AMD said, hurry up and transfer it to me. Edward picked up the card carefully and glanced at Emo, wanting to ask if Emo would spare his life afterwards. But he saw a fireball suddenly emerge from Emo's hand, and he quickly did as told. A while later, Edward handed the card back to Emo carefully. Emo took it and then said pleasantly, "Edward, I actually really do have some interest in your place. What's the secret as to why the air in your garden is so good?" If he hadn't seen Emo kill tens of people with his own eyes a moment earlier, Edward would have believed Emo was just a neighbor who had come over for a chat. Seeing Edward's mind wander off, Emo patted the armrest of the chair, and it immediately got shattered. "Edward, I'm asking you something. Didn't you hear me?" Yes." Edward wanted to crawl up subconsciously, but when he glanced at Emo, he went back down and didn't dare think about anything else anymore. He said, "It's all because a few years ago, I found an animal that can seek treasure." "An animal that can seek treasure?" Emo stood up. That sounded like a spirit beast from the cultivation realm. Yes. Edward quickly said yes as he saw Emo get up. Emo waved his hand and said, "Continue. What sort of animal is it? Be specific." Edward continued, "It's a fox-like animal. The person that gave the small thing to me said that it's a snow fox from the Nei snow mountains in China." Edward said, "I just thought it was very cute, so I kept it in my manor. At that time, I didn't know it had the capability to seek treasure. Then one day, a friend of mine was showing off his shooting skills with me and killed it." Then Edward peeked at Emo. Meanwhile, Emo was considering whether that might have been that white fox he saw at the Nei snow mountains. Emo glared at Edward. "Edward, since it was such a cute fox, why did you kill it, you fool? What has this got to do with the spirit chi in your garden anyway? Talk more bullshit with me and I'll give you a fireball immediately." Spirit chi? Of course Edward didn't know what that was, but seeing Emo's anger, he quickly said, "No, hold on. I told people to carry the fox away, but my men said they found a stack of diamonds beside the fox. I quickly went over and found that those weren't diamonds. The material wasn't as hard as diamond. It was a pretty milky white crystal, and I found that the plants nearby it seemed much prettier, and that the air nearby was also much better. So I dash. What did you do?" Emo had a bad feeling. Edward shivered. "I told the person to grind it to powder and mix it with water to water the plants in my garden. In the end, all the plants in my garden became pretty and the air quality became very good. I even get rid of my migraines after living here for a long time. I know those crystals were good things." But dash slap Emo broke the other armrest and said in anger, "But what? Did you grind all the crystals?" "Yes," Edward said. His sweat was dripping to the ground. Emo was sure those milky crystals had been spirit stones. What a waste. Such a magical creature was killed by an idiot, and the spirit stones were grinded to powder by another idiot. Seeing Emo's face, Edward quickly said, "There are more snow foxes 9 and the Nei snow mountain. As soon as I understood the snow fox's power, I immediately told Erickson to go to the snow mountains again." Was the snow fox really that small fox he had seen before? If the snow foxes had such abilities, then they would be top-grade spirit beasts even in the cultivation realm. A spirit beast that could find spirit stones. That was too absurd. Thinking about the white man he had killed in the snow mountains, that guy had indeed been called Erickson. Good thing he killed him. Otherwise, if that small fox had fallen into his hands, it wouldn't have been good. Thinking about the snow mountains, Emo immediately thought of Song Yangzhu, who had made him lose his virginity. That fiery tent and her snow-white, bouncy skin. Had he still not forgotten about her? He wondered how she was now. Emo shook his head and cast those thoughts aside. Emo was sure that the small fox he had seen was the snow fox. Firstly, these snow foxes should obviously fear strangers, but it hadn't feared him because he was a spirit cultivator. There were no spirit cultivators on Earth except for him. The fox must have felt that he was different. Secondly, when the spirit well exploded, the snow fox had been the first to find it. The cute creature was such a precious treasure. If the snow fox were to follow him and look through the entire Earth, who knew if he might not find more spirit stones? Snow fox? Spirit-seeking beast? Thinking about this, Emo wanted to go back to the snow mountains immediately. Seeing that Emo wasn't talking, Edward was getting very uneasy. Just as he was pitying his own fate, Emo suddenly said, On account of you telling me so much useful information. Edward rejoiced, but before he could talk, a fireball flew over and the last words he heard were, "I'll reward you with a fireball and give you a quick death." After leaving the manor, Emo felt like the trip had been worth it. Tens of millions of dollars might not be significant, but finding out about the value of the snow fox definitely was. There was one thing Emo had forgotten to ask Edward before leaving, which was why he had cared about Xianxia. Chinese Backstreet had always been the poorest place in Mexico, but of course, a few people still became wealthy. Ross was one of those people, but he had forgotten about his roots. He changed his name from Lu Luasi to Ross and looked down on the poor people in Chinese Backstreet. But because there were some people he knew from the past, he still sometimes hired workers from there. At the moment, he was lying in the best hospital in Mexico, receiving oral surgery. He knew that Emo would be dead for sure, having followed Edward along. So he didn't expect Emo to be able to compensate him or anything. In a small house in Chinese Backstreet, a very skinny and ugly woman sat on an old tattered chair. There were two girls by her side. One was a blonde-haired girl and another a clean-looking Chinese girl. They were Annie and Xianxia. The group was silent and seemed to have been like that for a long time. Xianxia suddenly said, "Auntie, if something happened to Emo, we can report it to the mayor. And if we can't, we'll fight it out with Lu Laosi. Now that I think of it, he must have conspired with Edward to scam us. But I really don't know what they can scam from us." The woman on the chair said after a long while, "Cece, we can't beat them. That Emo, he dash." The woman's voice was very beautiful. It was like the voice of a teenage girl, yet her face was that of an ugly old woman's. The woman said those few words and seemed to sink into reminiscence. "Sister Cece, you said that jade statue was really not broken? Why did they say you broke it?" Annie suddenly asked. Xianxia had forgotten about it, and now that Annie asked, she immediately thought, "Yeah, I saw that white jade statue with my own eyes, and there really was a crack on it. How come that after Emo touched it, the crack was gone?" "I don't know either. I really did see a crack on it," Xianxia confirmed firmly. This incident was too eerie. "By the way, Annie, what did you say you were doing at the underground boxing ring?" Xianxia asked. Annie was going to tell them after Xianxia won the prize money, but now that Xianxia asked, she could only say, "Jujia wants to participate in the tournament, so we went to sign up." "What?" Xianxia got up abruptly. Her brother had gone to fight there? People die there. What were Annie and Xianxia thinking? She didn't dare imagine the consequences and charged out without thinking. Seeing this, Annie also closed the door and followed. When Emo returned to Chinese Backstreet, he thought he would find Annie immediately, but saw that she wasn't waiting for him there. Emo didn't mind, though. He could search even the entire street with his spirit sense in an instant. There were at most 1,000 or 2,000 people there, so it really wasn't a big deal for him, and he knew he was looking for a woman, so his search parameter was much smaller than that. As Emo went along the street to the corner of it, his spirit sense made him stop because of a suspicious room. The room was dark and had only a tattered chair, and an ugly and old woman inside. It was when Emo saw this woman that he stopped. This woman had masqueraded her looks. She wasn't actually that ugly. She had just rubbed a layer of substances on her face. For the first time, Emo sent his spirit sense inside her clothes. As expected, although her neck and hands looked black, the skin inside her clothes was very white. Emo didn't continue looking. However, regardless of whether or not this person was Sister Yen, she probably had no relation to him. Because Emo saw that behind her ear was some baby hair which signaled she was a virgin. How could she be related to him then? But since the woman had changed her face, he had to go check. Why would a woman be making herself that ugly in this slum? Who was this woman? Emo frowned and walked over before pushing open the door. The woman on the chair had only just woken up and suddenly found that Cece and Annie had left, when a stranger entered her room. She was shook and subconsciously took a shirt to block herself. This was just a subconscious action of self-protection, but soon, she realized that her actions weren't appropriate. She put down the shirt and looked at Emo. "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" Her tone was coarse. Emo suddenly sat down and studied this woman before asking, "I came to find a certain someone, Some people call her Sister Yen. Do you know this person? Emo's spirit sense clearly noticed the woman shiver. Don't worry. Sister Yen might be related to me. I bear no ill will. My name is Emo, and I come from China. Emo suddenly had the feeling that perhaps this woman was the Sister Yen he was looking for. You're Emo? The person who helped Cece? Edward didn't make you stay. The woman's voice suddenly became crisp. Emo nodded. Yes, I'm Emo. And no, Edward didn't keep me. He actually sponsored me with some dollars, after which I left. The woman fell into silence. She had calmed down and studied Emo for a long time, before shakily standing up. You're ill. Emo went up to help her. When he held her, he felt her body shake once more. You don't need to help me, but thank you for helping Cece. Although she told Emo not to help her, she didn't even have the energy to push Emo away. She probably knew what Edward sponsored me meant. She had been in the Chinese gang for long enough to understand that. Emo took out a bracelet and handed it to her. I came here thanks to this bracelet. When she saw the bracelet, she suddenly grabbed it as tears flowed out of her eyes uncontrollably. Emo saw this and guessed that she was most likely that Sister Yen. The bracelet belonged to her. Emo took out a lotus life pill and fed it to her without hesitation. Then, he grabbed her hand and started helping her treat her meridians. 10 minutes later, the woman spat out some blood, and impurities started seeping out of her body. Under the intense nourishment of his chi and the lotus life pill, she fell unconscious. Emo sighed. He knew that it was due to long-term stress. Good thing he had come in time. If that had dragged on for another year or even only half a year, she would have been done for. Emo didn't wake her up, because her meridians were in the process of rapidly developing. A few minutes later, she woke up by herself, and as she smelled the putrid smell coming from her body, she screamed and rushed into the shower without saying anything to Emo. Emo laughed to himself. No matter what age a woman was, she would of course still care about that a lot. But Emo soon heard another scream in the shower and charged over without hesitation, finding her unconscious in one corner of the shower with blood on her head. Emo didn't know how she had fallen, but he hesitated about helping her. Suddenly Emo thought, what am I hesitating about? Annie and Xianxia both weren't there. Although she had taken off her clothes, she was at least 40 years old. Furthermore, he had already seen her now, so it would only be more awkward if he woke her up like that. Hence, he might as well help her get dressed. But as Emo started washing her with waterball magic, he found that he might have been wrong. He thought she would be quite old for sure, yet now he realized she wasn't like a woman in her 50s at all. Her skin was even whiter than Song Yangzhu's, and her chest wasn't slumping at all. Emo didn't dare to keep looking. He quickly cleaned her up and put a set of clothes on her. He even removed the scarring on her head. He also helped her remove the stuff on her face. Then, he put her on a layback chair and waited for her to wake up, while he studied the house a bit. The house was very old, and the living room was very small. It had 3 rooms. Emo half thought Xianxia and Xianxia were her children, but now he knew they weren't. Xia. So this woman had given them the name, huh? That meant that she was longing for home. Emo sighed. Life had really been hard on this woman. Emo looked at her again and was dazed. She wasn't Sister Yen? He had Sister Yen's photo, and they didn't appear to be the same person. He had hurriedly washed her up and didn't even realize that this woman was so beautiful that she was actually on par with Luo Ying. In fact, Emo could see a shadow of Luo Ying in her. Was she related to Luo Ying? That was impossible. While Emo was busy guessing who she was, the woman opened her eyes. She looked up and saw Emo and suddenly thought of something. She touched her clothes and immediately, her face drastically changed. It turned first red and then white. She had seen that the scars on her waist had disappeared in the shower and had fallen over in shock on the spot. But now, she had been washed clean and even had clothes on. She didn't need to think much to figure out that Emo had done that. Sorry, it was an emergency, so I helped you a bit. He saw the woman look at her clothes again, so he could only say, I didn't know where your clothes were, so I could only take out a set of my wife's clothes. You're already married? Her expression eased a bit. Emo nodded. Although we haven't had a wedding yet. But yes, I'm married. The woman obviously misunderstood Emo. She thought Emo meant that they hadn't gotten married yet but were already living together. Then, she took out the bracelet again and couldn't help but tear up once more. Because of the woman being seemingly lost in nostalgia, Emo could only break the silence by saying, I got this bracelet from an antiques shop in San Francisco. Trying to find the owner of the bracelet, I found my way here. Wait, what relationship do you have with this bracelet? Why did you try to find me? The woman suddenly asked. Because I also have one just like it. Then Emo took out his bracelet. Seeing it, the excitement in the woman's eyes became obvious. She grabbed Emo's bracelet too and stared at the two bracelets. More tears appeared on her face. Emo didn't stop her and just waited quietly for her to calm down. Who are you? The woman looked at Emo for a while before asking shakily. Emo sighed. I'm Emo. I come from Beijing. Yes, you're Emo. I know that you're really, your father is Yi Kai, your mother is Yi Qingqing. That year you had only just learned to walk, yet now you're so big already. I should have long thought of it. Your eyes are exactly the same as his. The woman murmured and even grabbed Emo's hand. Emo didn't speak. He didn't know who this woman was to him. But since when was his father Yi Kai? Emo saw that the eyes the woman looked at him with were filled with joy from the bottom of her heart. Emo's heart shook. How much love was needed to look at someone with eyes like that? The woman dragged Emo to sit down next to her and looked at him carefully. The care in her eyes was so explicit that even an idiot would be able to notice it. Emo suddenly felt warm in his heart. This was the first time he received such care. Xianxia gave him love, but that was different to this kind of care. Tell Sister Yen. How have you been all these years? Ever since Emo had said his name, the woman had never let go of Emo's hands. Sister Yen? Emo was confused for now, but he didn't intend to hide anything from her. He simply told her that he had been kicked out of the Yi family, because he didn't remember anything. After hearing that Emo had been kicked out and left to fend for himself in Ninghai, Sister Yen breathed heavily until her face burst red, and she stood up cursing, Yi Wenyan, you idiot, hypocrite. Emo looked at Sister Yen in confusion, thinking you seem to have been living in worse conditions than me in Ninghai. But before he could say anything, Sister Yen embraced him in her arms. Although she was skinny, she did have quite the chest. Emo happened to be hugged into her chest, and the softness touching Emo's face made him feel very awkward, but he couldn't really struggle away. He still didn't even know who Sister Yen was to him. He had a lot of things to ask her, but he hadn't even gotten the chance to yet. Even Emo couldn't endure being embraced by such a beautiful woman's chest and felt a little hot. Just as he wanted to push her away, Sister Yen seemed to have thought of something and let him go. Her cheeks were a little red as she held Emo's face. You're big and very capable already. I can rest assured now. Emo wanted to say something, but Sister Yen seemed to know what he wanted to say and stopped him. She just looked at Emo with fire in her eyes that made Emo even a little worried. That fire wasn't like the care of an elder looking at their younger generation, but more like the fire of a lover. Emo was shaken. Although Sister Yen was very pretty, Emo knew she had to be at least 40, and apparently she was an elder of his. After a long while, Sister Yen's eyes still appeared strange, and she suddenly said, I have masqueraded my face. I want to wash it and let you see me. That sentence was already a bit intimate, and Emo was feeling uncomfortable, but he still said, Sister Yen, I already washed it off. Huh. Sister Yen quickly picked up a mirror and saw that the makeup was gone indeed, and her face shone with a long-forgotten beauty. She touched her face subconsciously as tears rolled down her face once more. Emo didn't understand how she felt at that moment, but he knew not to disturb her. Then, she put down the mirror and started asking about every detail of Emo's life, especially about Ning Qingxue, but she never mentioned her own life. After confirming that Emo was indeed living well, and that she didn't need to worry, she finally felt assured. After a while, she seemed to have made up her mind and suddenly looked at Emo sweetly. Wait here for me. I'll be back soon. As she went into a different room, Emo could scan with his spirit sense to know what she was doing. But he didn't. After a long while, Sister Yen carried a bag with 2 books into the room. Seemed a little old. Emo just realized that she had gone to masquerade her face again. Indeed, if her face were to be seen, that would be a big problem. Emo got up, and Sister Yen looked at him again. But the fire in her eyes turned into melancholy and then into emptiness. Emo was a bit worried and grabbed her hand, sending some chi over. She came back to her senses and seemed shocked at Emo's chi. "Can you hug me?" Sister Yen suddenly said something Emo didn't expect. Seeing Emo's shock, Sister Yen suddenly smiled. "I'm the closest person to family you have. What are you embarrassed about?" Just then, "Didn't you?" Emo smiled and hugged her. He felt she must have a reason. When Emo embraced her, Sister Yen shook a bit, and after a long while, she pushed Emo away. Although her face was ruddy, she had now recovered and smiled to Emo. "These 2 books are for you, and I will be going." "What? You're going?" "I'll go with you then." Emo understood she would be leaving far away. Sister Yen smiled. "My greatest wish was for you to be safe. Since you're fine and have such great power, my wish has been fulfilled. Since you went in, that bastard is already dead, he could be called lucky. However, there are still things I need to take care of myself. I can't go with you." Emo was dazed. He still had a lot of questions to ask her. He didn't even know how he was related with her. "I know what you want to ask, and I've given it to you. You don't need to worry about me either. I can protect myself." Seeing Emo's worry, she wanted to stay, but she quickly cast the thought aside. Emo could tell that she had cultivated ancient martial arts before, but she wasn't very strong. She wasn't even at the yellow level. Emo had looked at her meridians and knew that the cultivation method she used was very strong, though. Seeing Emo open his mouth, Sister Yen stopped him yet again. "You don't need to try persuading me. I like going alone. After I leave, please look after Xianxia and Insi if you can. They are siblings I found here." Emo sighed. He knew that Sister Yen had made up her mind and that there was no use in trying to persuade her. "Oh, and I really like your wife's clothes. Thank you. I don't have anything to give you, but that bracelet had been with me for a long time. I might have lost it, but since you found it, go ahead and keep it." "Well then, I'll be going." Suddenly her eyes turned red again. "Hold on." Emo stopped her and gave her 2 jade bottles. "These are some pills my master gave me. This is called the face-preserving pill, and this is the chi-increasing pill. It can increase your power." As though fearing that she didn't believe him, Emo continued, "These 2 pills are as good as the Lotus Life pill." "Oh right, I'll give you one more." Sister Yen took the pills and nodded. "I might have been out for many years, but if I hadn't been sick, I wouldn't be in this state. Don't worry." Hearing this, Emo realized something else, quickly took out a card and gave it to her. "There's a bit of money in here. Take it. The PIN code is all ones." "No, I can't take that. I have some savings." "I know that you're not short on money, but I can't take it." Sister Yen pushed the card back to Emo.